Thank you so very much.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Thank you. Ooh, now we're all warmed up. Nobody wants to sit down. So we're gonna take this party some other time. Would you guys like to say something? Oh, I think they have. Would you like to say something?
Thank you guys for having us. It's always a pleasure when we get to participate in events like this, especially highlighting Africa and all the African talents in all spheres of life. Keep up the good work, Mas, and we hope to collaborate again with you in the future. Keep doing the amazing job that you're doing, and shout out to all the Africans, all Rwandese, McGill University. Let's keep Africa shine forever and ever.
Thank you, thank you. That is Emmanuel. And I also recognize Giselle and Delise. Thank you guys. We don't know how you do that. I don't think you have bones or something. So thank you so much. There's Henry as well. And the cameraman. Thank you for making it happen. I know it was a challenge to do this live, and we appreciate technology for allowing us to do this. So thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Whew. I don't know what we can do after that. I feel like we need to dance a little bit more, but the party continues because Aïssata is here to guide us into conversation. Aïssata is going to be our keynote speaker today. She is the program director with the University of Montreal Hospital Research Center and the Canadian Research Initiative in Substance Misuse. She has a BA in sociology with distinction from Bishop's University and is currently pursuing a master's in sociology at the University of Montreal. She has academic and professional training in management and clinical research. When not orchestrating clinical and intervention research in substance use, she's a trained doula and is on the ANECT African Network for Extrajudicial Killings and Enforced Disappearance Board of Advisors at the hospital. For the Equity or Diversity and Inclusion Committee over there. And among her ambitions, she plans to visit all the countries of the continent. She has been to 7 nations so far, and she tends to be part of restructuring and the regulations of the therapeutic drugs for human use and in sub-Saharan countries and elsewhere on the continent. Her current adage, state your fear and prepare for opportunities. As a proud Ivorian and even prouder Ghanaian mother, she is actively exploring her Canadianness and what it means to be Black in North America and in the intersections of color, class, and culture. So if she was not Zooming with you all today, she will be skiing. Yes, skiing today. So we appreciate you for joining us today, Aïssata. So take it away. The mic is yours. And yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Alice. Thank you for having welcoming me. I need to recuperate from the Umurage performance. I did not know it was going to be a cardio introduction. I would have prepared. So for all those I hope nobody got hurt. As I saw them jumping, I was like, please warn people next time, you need to have good knees to do Rwandan dancing. So for anyone who got hurt, raise your hands, call a friend. We don't want people getting hurt during enjoyment of dancing. I saw Bella grooving in her lab coat over there. So thank you so much for that. Thank you again for all the wonderful leaders at MAS for inviting me. I feel very privileged to be invited to this group, considering that I was not a full-time student at McGill, but happy to be here, happy to be part of any conversation that starts with Africa Speaks. And after listening to part of the panel yesterday, I'm very happy to be at the intersection of what was discussed yesterday and what will be touched on today. So for anyone who has questions, please feel free. I really want this to be a conversation as opposed to just me speaking to a screen. Before I proceed, I'd like to usually do this. I want a full screen of a gallery view. And for all those who are blacked out, or for those who see, is everybody okay? We are in the middle of a pandemic. I don't know where you are, if you're in Canada, if you're back home, but I'm gonna need to see some hearts. I'm going to need to see some hands. I need to make sure that where you are safe, you are feeling motivated, you have light, clearly you have electricity if you're able to join, but wherever you are on this Saturday, February 20th, I'm not going to talk if I don't see hearts, if I don't see hands. Find your Zoom reaction buttons and do something, because I'm not missing these ski hills for screens. So I'm going to need the mass people to show me some love and to show themselves some love and check in with yourself. So if you have not asked yourself today, how am I doing? Please do so now and make sure that in these difficult times, wherever we are, we need to check in with ourselves and check in with the people we love and make sure that we are okay. So I see some hands, because if this was live, I would have done the same thing. So that was number one. Number two, I really wanted to touch on also on what Laura said earlier about land acknowledgement. The theme of the conference is Africa Beyond the Motherland. We need to acknowledge that we are on people's motherlands that can't go anywhere. It is a privilege to be someone who has another opportunity as far as another passport or a way to get out. If I don't want to stay in Canada, I have two options. Go to Ghana if they give me my passport, or go to Ivory Coast, I still have my passport. That is a privilege to know that we are here with choice to leave. When you're a First Nations, when you're a First Voice, you are in your own country with other people who claim it and you have nowhere else to go. And you're often secluded in reserves and dealing with different situations. Or when you're away from your people, you have to deal constantly with the reminder that your land, your motherland, is being occupied by someone else. So I think as individuals coming from a continent that is often mistaken for a country, when we are here, we must acknowledge these first voices that are often silenced, invisible, and are dealing with traumas that we cannot begin to understand. So I wanted to continue with that as far as the acknowledgement. Number 2 or 3 is optimism. Last night, one of the words that came out was Afro-optimism. And it's important today to speak from an optimistic standpoint. And if we were live, I would have asked for a show of hands. How many people are graduating? How many people are graduating? Okay, that's Naila. How many people are graduating? Okay, have most people graduated already? I imagine that we have a lot of people that have already graduated. Okay, and how many are new students, still first year, second year? No, how many do we have? A few, okay. And the words I'd like to share, if I may, and then I'll get into my story, is be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I find that oftentimes we don't say that, but be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's number one. And something that I say all the time is speak your fear or state your fear. When you come into a room, state your fear in your head. I'm afraid to fail. I'm afraid to seem as if I am a fraud. I am afraid to not know what I'm going to say. I am afraid to not seem eloquent. I am afraid that I will not know. I am afraid I will not be listened to. I am afraid I will make a mistake. I am afraid I will disappoint my parents. State your fear, because stating that fear would allow you to understand it and move beyond it, because fear is not the end of it. It is not. It is a normal process, it's a normal feeling, and we just work with it or work through it. Number 2, the other F is failure. I always tell friends that, it took 1,000 failures or it took 1,500 failures to get to Google or to get to Microsoft or even to get to the light bulb or to get to the telephone. So there was no greatness or even less greatness, a little bit of ness that did not require failure. So as students who are privileged to be in the Harvard of the North, I remember McGill always claiming that they're the top school in Canada. When you aspire and when you're entered into a space of this type of privilege, because it is a privilege, understand that you might fail. And when that happens, acknowledge it and give yourself some grace and some patience to say that I tried and it did not work out. Is it the end of the world? It is not. So understand failure. It took a long time for me to be comfortable with that. So to my story as an African, so I am from the Ivory Coast. I was born and raised in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, and I have a mother who's Ghanaian and who immigrated to Ivory Coast and met my father there. So for my Ghanaian friends out there, I wish you would claim me, because I don't speak a Ghanaian language. I don't speak Ashanti, I understand it. And I only go to Ghana on vacation. And, every time I meet Ghanaians, I'm like, can you claim a sister? Because I would love that Ghanaian passport and they're not trying to give it to me, but I'm working on it. I'm working on going back as a Ghanaian, but that is my story. So I grew up, raised in Ivory Coast with a Ghanaian mother. And then I had the opportunity to move to the US through my mother's employment. And then from the US, I came to Canada. So today I find myself to be one of these American Africans. I am an African because of where I come from, because of my passport, because of the food, because of my name, because of where my parents come from, and the values and the core structure that built my understanding of the world, or what I imagine the world to be, or what I imagine my space in the world to be, because of my parents. But I've also spent a great portion of my life outside of the motherland. I was shaped by my experience in a space in the US, and I'm even more shaped by a college experience, and a university experience, and an adulthood experience in Canada. So how does that shape my relationship to the continent, myself as someone who's left and willingly left the continent, because then we'll touch on that, because that's not everybody's story, and how you get to Canada, you get to Quebec, which is another Canada, and then the choices that you make once you're done with school. Do you stay or do you go? And I won't say back, but do you go elsewhere? Do you go to Europe? Do you go to Asia? Do you go to South America? Do you go south of the US, of Canada to the US? Or do you go back home? And I put brackets, because when you've been away from whichever African country you're from 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, during a period of your life that shapes you, what is home? Is home the image that you make? Is the memories? How do you internalize the fact that you have been in another country and you have internalized some cultures, some elements of this Canadian identity? How do you navigate that? So that's also something that I think we should speak on amongst ourselves when we gather, because that's also something that shapes how we're perceived. So that is my journey to how I got here. So we can discuss that another time, but my education path. So I'm one of these people who started out with parents that were like, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be an engineer, you're going to work at the World Bank, you're going to be at the United Nations, you're going to be at la BAD, you're going to be a diplomat, because that was the framework that they grew up in, that was their generation. And then you graduate from high school. I went to a French international school. You graduate from high school, and then you go into a university program, and you realize that, at least for me, when I arrived at university, the first thing I did is university meant to prepare you for the work world? And the answer was no. So imagine 17-year-old me understanding that this degree that I'm going to get from Bishops is not a guaranteed spot in the job market. So it's graduate in June, might be homeless. Graduate in June, I might need to move back with my parents. Graduate in June, and I'm still needing, we used to call it le geste. So I speak French, I'm Francophone. So remember when you're waiting for your parents to send you money, we call that le geste. So you're thinking, I might still need to depend on my parents. That anxiety of the fact that, wait a minute, nobody told me that when I'm done, I'm not gonna get a job that's specific to my degree. So 17-year-old me gets this rug pulled under her. I'm not even done yet. I just started. This is my new class. And you're telling me that this degree in sociology is not gonna get, there's no job on Indeed that says sociologist that pays such and such. So there's a reckoning with the fact that, what are we doing at university? What is the purpose of university as far as our growth, as far as our autonomy, and as far as our understanding of who we are and how we occupy the space in the world? So as you are graduating or as you're finishing school, take a moment to do that, because that will have an impact on your path. And the fact that not all paths are the same. If your ambition is to work at the United Nations, or to work at Microsoft, or to be your own boss and to become an entrepreneur, understand that, state it, and give yourself the opportunity to try and to divert from that path. But do not limit yourself to the fact that I studied this. I studied law. Most of you can't because of the Quebec laws, but I studied political science. I studied mathematics. I did engineering, etc. It does not mean that that is what you should be doing systematically. But if that is what you want to do, do so. But be comfortable with the fact that not all paths are linear, that not A plus B will equal C. So in my situation, I started out thinking I might be doing law, but when I came here, I realized I couldn't. So I did sociology, I did criminology, and I did communications. And let me backtrack. So I was very involved in high school in all things associations, and I was very interested in the place of women in North America and women in the West African countries, etc. And then I took a women's studies class, and I was livid. I was livid. First year, 17, I'm in a women's studies class, and I said to my teacher, and if there's some teachers listening, I told the teacher, this is not a women's studies class. This is a middle class, white, Francophone woman history class. There's nothing you're saying that is juxtaposed or representative or of poor white women, of non-white women, of working class non-white women, of First Nations women. I was enraged. I was like, how dare you allow yourself to claim women and just have this tunnel vision in the curriculum of just the experience of middle class to upper class white Francophone women and even Anglophone women outside of Quebec. So that was the beginning of cold, I don't want to say cold showers, but of reality checks through my academic path of being confronted with what is this education that I'm getting and how is it going to impact my growth. So important to give yourself space to question what it is that you're learning, why you're learning it, and how it might help you either now or later. And so graduate, I went to Mexico. So for those of you who can, so parentheses, for those of you, I shouldn't say this, COVID, I miss a plane. For those of you who can and will, please travel, please discover, please see, not just through YouTube, but if you can go to a country, go elsewhere and learn. Going to Mexico was eye-opening because I understood for the first time what it was like to be Black outside of the African continent and outside of the two other North American countries. So I knew what it was like to be Black in Canada. I knew what it was like to be Black in parts of the Eastern United States, but I had no idea the experience of individuals who looked like me in a former Spanish colony, which was extremely eye-opening. And when I came back to Canada, it also colored my view of what it's like to have our skin tone outside the continent. So if you have the opportunity to travel, so graduate with distinction and honors, and what now? So I decided, no, I'm not going to do my master's right away. I am going to work. So what do I work in? So I went back to the continent and I found work in Benin, which was very interesting to try to work outside of my country. So things happen, come back, find work, etc. And then what? What now? I'm making peanuts. I'm embarrassed to tell my parents how much money I'm making because I still depend on them to send money, but that was not the plan. I'm brilliant. I graduated with distinction, honors, top of my class. My parents are bragging about me. And mind you, my dad was telling everybody I was a psychologist. My uncle was telling everybody I was a pharmacologist. No one knew what I was doing. And I kept saying, hey, sociology. My dad was like, c'est une psychologue. My uncle was like, c'est une femme. I'm like, what is psychologue? Psy means fish in Latin. Family, get it together. Sociology. My aunt was telling people I was social work. I was like, who told you I do social work? It's so I imagine most of you have these stories of family members who have no idea what you're doing, but that's okay. That's why we need to have conversations. So there was that. And then there was the failure, the fear that I had failed, the fear that this path that I had chosen wasn't taking me anywhere. So through understanding the fear, I learned back to trying. Yesterday, there was conversation about a seat at the table, create the table. So I started creating my tables through the privilege that I saw in my color, in my culture. So anecdotes that I have, my name is Aïssata Sako. Imagine sending a CV and arriving at a place and the lady's looking at me like, can we help you? I was like, yeah, I have an interview. They're like, no, you don't. I was like, yes, I do. They were expecting somebody who was Japanese. And I would always say, konnichiwa arigato. It didn't matter. I was there. And I have so many situations where my name allows me to get in because my name, for someone who doesn't know anything about West Africa, sounds Japanese. And we all know that, you know, some cultures have certain positive perceptions of who they are. And I benefited from a positive perception that I was Japanese. And I would get to these places where it was too late. I'd get the interview and I'd get a seat at the table. So I laugh about it today, but that also made me think about those who don't have names that are, you know, ambiguous, and how has that affected them, and how I can be a facilitator once I am at the table, a facilitator once I am at my job, a facilitator once I am on boards, to represent and to speak, with also the understanding that I cannot represent 55 countries and all these cultures from a continent. And also what it means to be in a space where if they don't think I'm Japanese, "Sak passe, comment vous y?" And just like, excuse me, I'm not Haitian. But you, of course you're Haitian. All Black people are Haitian. Isn't aren't all of you from IT? No, I'm going to need you to look at a map. No, you look Haitian. I was like, excuse me, what does looking Haitian? Mais madame, vous avez, vous ressemblez à une. No, I claim it if I was Haitian, power to the people, but I'm not. So you're dealing with that, or you have, you know, Europeans, because I don't speak a certain way in French. Est-ce que vous êtes Guadeloupéenne? Martiniquaise? Hein? La Maurice? Non. De l'Afrique de l'Ouest, la Côte d'Ivoire. Ah bon, pourtant, vous ne ressemblez pas. Don't you love that? You don't look like. What does it look like? What do we look like? So you're navigating spaces. I had someone tell me, and you probably have this, oh no, you're too fat to be African. You people are starving. I saw you on World Vision on Sunday. I gave you $55. You look well. No, you're Jamaican. You look Jamaican. No? Okay. From Guyana? I went on vacation to Guyana. I loved it. The food, the people. So you're confronted with this, and all you're trying to do is live your melanated life outside of your motherland. And you're dealing with all these perceptions and people projecting on you, and you're trying to navigate that and control how does this make yourself feel. And I find humor in it. You know, today when I start a conference with non-Africans, I say this, and for those who don't speak French, forgive me, I'll start saying, de mon Saguenay natal. For those who know Quebec, Saguenay is 7 hours from Montreal and is pretty much very conservative, pro-white, pro-Quebec, pro-French. They're not very welcoming to those of us. So when I start a sentence saying that I am a native from Saguenay, people are like, what did she say? She's from, just to destabilize them, to say that, why do you assume that coming from a specific space looks like this? Why do you assume that I am an Ivorian, which is a Francophone country, yet I'm able to express myself in English this way, and I speak Spanish and I speak Portuguese? Why must we be one-dimensional? So if there's anything you can take for this part of the conversation of what I'm trying to share, is allow yourself to recognize what this means when you are not home, when you are not in your country or your countries on the continent, and what it's like to look like you look in North America, and what it's like to sound like you sound, and to have the name that you have. How has that impacted you, and how you move beyond? Because you must move beyond. We're in optimism. You must move beyond and find the lessons learned, and how that anchors you, and how that allows you also to grow. And as we speak of growth, when I hear Africa beyond the motherland, is do not underestimate the ability, and I want you to visualize what I'm saying here, the ability that your roots, the wings that they give you. Oftentimes we see roots and we see a tree and we see branches, but a tree doesn't go anywhere. But forget the tree. Allow your roots to give you wings. Allow your roots to be that anchor, not like a sinking ship that keeps you immobile, but allows you to come back to something that centers you, that you know, because we're human, but also lets you know that if I get lost, I know where to come back to. Allow yourself that. Allow your path to not be linear. Allow yourself to have conversation with your parents, saying that, Mom, I don't want to do this right now, or I want to try something else, especially if you're still in school and you're still dependent on your parents. Allow yourself to ask questions and to think that maybe this isn't the only path. There's no such thing as the right path, but it's not the only path. And as individuals who are from the motherland, or who are African, or who identify as Afro-descendant, let us be kind and in humor with one another, and recognize that we come in all colors, that we come in all cultures, that we come in all languages, and what does that mean, and how that is a strength and not a weakness, and that we need to celebrate together and grow together, and be very proactive in this, occupying this time that is ours. It is time to just no longer be humble. After Black Panther came out, I had a lot of people, I saw Black Panther, Wakanda, when are we going? I was like, I don't know. I think they're opening the theme park. I have no, Wakanda is not a real country. Oh, isn't it on top of Uganda? Well, I appreciate you noticing when the comet in the movie dropped, what is it? Where vibranium dropped, it is on top of Uganda, but no, the Ugandese got it. They're good. No, it's not real. Trust me, I wish I could work in Wakanda, but no. So at this time, where African music and all of African music, whether it's music from Ivory Coast or the Maghreb, or even from Tanzania, shout out to my Tanzanian people. I am coming to vacation in your beaches. And, people from Madagascar, as we are looking to ourselves, for ourselves, and recognizing our textures and our food and our brilliance, and we're being less humble, because do not misbelieve the fact that we, and I say we, W-E, as people from the continent, have been excelling always everywhere. And it's just that today, through media, it's more spoken, but don't let them mislead you to believe that this is something new. It is not. So bask in that, work in that, and try, and do not be afraid that your path is not what your parents wanted you to do, what you wanted to do, and ask questions, find a mentor, and do not be in a negative competition with yourself and your others. You don't know what people are going through. You don't know what resources others have. So if you're projecting and you're comparing, you might be disappointed. But trust in yourself. You are brilliant. You have the ability. You're afraid. That is okay. Fear never killed anybody. And if you failed, you try again. Honestly, I don't want to go through the Aaliyah and kind of disclose my age. But she did say, if at first you don't, I can't sing. Even though I know I look like an amazing backup singer, I cannot sing for my life. She said, if at first you don't succeed, dust yourself off and try again. Truer words have never been said. So as we go into the next phase of this conversation, I want you to think about what your color has brought to you. And again, I see all of us, we're from dark to light, all shades of melanin. What your class, so the privilege that you have, why you came here, how you came here, who you came here with, and how you're able to live here or where you are, and how that impacts your reality. and your culture being when you meet someone else from the continent, how you feel about yourself and what does that validate about you and what does that question about you, and to support. Africa beyond the motherland is also Africa back to the motherland. What are you doing to encourage the growth of our motherland? Yesterday there was conversation about the brain drain and the brain gain. We bring a lot to these countries. What do we bring back? So think about what it is that you're doing in your day-to-day to contribute to that conversation and to those actions, and live in your fear, be fearless, and you got it. Trust yourself, try, fall, laugh, and mostly take care of yourself. Check in with yourself and trust yourself, and you're just going to be okay, and even more than okay. And once this pandemic is over, hopefully we can all travel. The plane. Travel to wherever it is that we call home. And if you have someone that's Afro-descendant that's never been, please invite them. Invite them to join you wherever you have an extra bed so they can discover and enjoy what it is that we love about being home, and the richness, and prepare them for the madness and the dustiness and everything else, but the love and the laughter and the value and the loyalty and the pride that we have in who and what we are, and mostly what we can be. So thank you for your time. Is everybody still okay? Okay, I need to see some hands, some hearts, something. Oh no, you don't have to clap, but thank you. Everybody still good? All right, so I have 30 minutes. That's me. I can still talk, but I'd love if you have questions for me. Love to. So if you have questions for me, I'd love to be able to answer them. And also, for those of you who might have Googled me, you're probably going to find, and I'm embarrassed, my 411 address. You can send me flowers, preferably white flowers, but that's about it. I am not on social media. I don't trust it. I'm very particular about my image. So if you want to reach out to me, email me. I'm pretty good. I still have a fax. So if you want to go old school, we can fax. And and a landline, but I'm very open and receptive to listen and to encourage and to create spaces for mentoring. Not that I have, I know everything, but I also have a network of other individuals from Africa who are doing okay, who are in positions of being autonomous and making decisions, and being actors of change in the world that they live in fields that are unexpected. I didn't touch on this, but I work in addiction. Can you imagine me explaining to my grandmother that I work with people who inject themselves and who are prostitutes? Jesus, oh Jesus. So it was that, but there are not many people who look like me, who sound like me in my field, but it doesn't stop me from working and doing the work that I do. So don't hesitate to reach out. I'll be really happy to connect with you. So Alice, I'm good?
You're still good. I do have a question here from the audience, but before we go to that, thank you so much. I'm fired up from your energy and from the gems. I'm writing notes right here, so you'll be quoted on social media, even if you're not on social media. Just so you know, you'll be trending.
That's okay.
Yeah. So before I ask the question from the audience, I know you have a particular way of saying your name and talking about where it comes from, or different variations of that. So I was wondering if you could share that story with the audience today too.
I'm glad you said that. So interesting story. I met a young man, brilliant man from Togo. And, I told him my name is Aïssata. And then someone else was with us and they said, oh, that's lovely. What does it mean? And I went through this, what I had been told. Aïssata is the Bambara. So I'm from the north of Ivory Coast and my people from Guinea and Mali. So it's the Bambara way of saying Aisha. Aisha is the Arabic word. It's an Arabic name. And for those who are Muslim ascendant, Aisha is the second wife of the Prophet Muhammad. And Aisha in Arabic means, in a way, she who is full of life. So that's what I understood, that Aïssata was Aisha, and then Asta, Amsitu, Aisha, any word that sounds like Aisha is linked to that. And this young man who's a fan of Cheikh Anta Diop, who's into, if you haven't read him, please read him. Brilliant Senegalese writer, Pan-Africanist. Anyway, and he said, no, your name is Nubian. Before all this, when we being part of Africa was Nubia, there was the goddess Aïssat, and she was the goddess of life. And then the Greeks came and heard about Aïssat, and it became Isis. And then the Arabs came, and Isis and Aïssat became Aisha. And then when the other cultures, they took Aïssat and they called it Aïssata. So do not give credit to other cultures for our own name. Aïssat is Nubian, goddess of life, get it together. I was like, if you weren't so, thank you for teaching me, sir. So that is where my name comes from, and I carry that with such pride, and it's my grandmother's name, and Aïssata, and it's interesting that there are two other Aisha and Aishe on the mass, and that is where we come from. That is our name.
That's awesome. That is so good. When you told me that, I was like, I need you to tell me that. Now I have a question from Neila, who's in the audience. She was wondering if you could speak on the Francophone nature of Quebec and certain African states like Cote d'Ivoire and the challenges of immigration here compared to other places.
Okay. Who asked the question? Say her name again.
Neila.
Neila,
if you want to specify or add on to that, I can give you the mic. Huh? You're good?
So the particularity of immigrating. So for those who don't know, Quebec aggressively promotes immigrating to Quebec, not Canada, to Quebec in Francophone country to maintain France. So you will notice if you look at immigration trends, the top groups that immigrate to Quebec from the continent or from the Maghreb. So Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria, and then they trickle down. Interestingly enough, two Francophone countries that do not easily access Quebec are Senegal and Guinea. If you look at the number of countries whose requests to immigrate here that are refused, Senegal and Guinea are super high. Ivory Coast is in the middle of it. Why? Because Ivorians actually do not like to leave Côte d'Ivoire. We are a very small diaspora outside of Ivory Coast not because I'm bragging. Life is absolutely fantastic in Ivory Coast. And we benefited from the positions of privilege that our former president, Félix Houphouët-Boigny, had with France and our economic autonomy and the fact that we are the hub for the 5 countries that surround us, Ghana, Liberia, oh my God, the shame, Burkina Faso, my geography, my goodness. So Burkina Faso, Ghana here, I believe we have Niger here. What is this one? Guinea, and then we have Liberia. Thank you, geography maps. So we supply electricity. So we're in a position of privilege in Ivory Coast from the 1960s. We had debit cards in the 90s. Can you imagine? I had my first CD in 1989. Oh my God, I just gave you my age. Never mind. Young. I am young. It was in my crib. So we had things in Ivory Coast that didn't really motivate us. And there are a lot of countries that Ivorians can go to that we didn't need passports. So up until 1996, we could go to Germany without, visas. So there were a lot of privileges. So Ivorians go and they come back and they're comfortable, and the quality of our schools didn't necessarily require that Ivorians leave. Then you have, fertility rates in Quebec that go down, and language concerns because Quebec is surrounded by Anglophones. So where are we going to get these French people? Because French, Swiss, Belgians, they're not sure they want to come to the northern part of the United States. So let's go get the next ones. Let's go to Africa. Let's get them. And these people also make babies. They're smart and they make babies. So let's bring them here, have them fill our schools. If you look at the stats, about 60, especially McGill, you feed the university circuit in Quebec with the money that you bring, because FYI, if you didn't know, the international student fees that you pay don't just go to McGill. They're put in a pot and all the universities share it. So when McGill brings in about 33% of the pot, there's a lot of power there. So close parentheses. So you have these students who are often privileged and brilliant who come stay, don't just 1 degree, they do 2 degrees, paying full tuition, 25K. So we're bringing in money that Quebecers won't pay. We're bringing the quality, we're working, and we choose to have children that are future taxpayers. So this makes us very interesting, fertile ground for immigration, and we speak the same language. Well, technically, we think we do, and then we show up and it's a different story. So Canada is very aggressive, and I don't know if there are other Ivorians here, is very aggressive in promoting recruitment of individuals to immigrate in 2 ways. For universities, there are some Ivorian universities that have pre-programs, so you do 2 years in an Ivorian university in Abidjan, and then you come to University of Montreal or UQAM. So there's all these ways by which students can come, and then there's also the economic immigration. But there's just this aggressive promotion of the Canadian Embassy in Ivory Coast for individuals to come here and to study. I don't know if I answered your question, Neila, but then that's the first part. The second part is the shock of French. So I remember watching TV5, and for those who watch French media, in the morning, there's the news from France, from Switzerland, from Luxembourg, and then you have Radio Canada. And I always loved the fact that they had Jérôme Durand, I forget his name, and they had that international Québécois. So it's Quebec enough, but neutral enough so you understand. And then you show up, and then you're like, and for those who are Québécois, I am characterizing, I'm not trying to disrespect you or anything, but when you are in the tu lolo, you're shocked. So quick anecdote. My mother and I come to visit Bishops, and then we're driving and we're stuck, and we roll the windows down and we ask the gentleman, excuse us, we're looking for this. He's like, ben là, tu vas droite là, ben à la lumière là, tu vas droite encore, puis encore. And you're like, okay. So we were looking for the street light. So we're like, street lights. Okay, street lights. He said, is direct? Okay. So we just kept going. It's like, you know what? We got lost. So we saw a lady. I'm like, ma'am, do you speak English? Yes. We're trying to, oh, honey, at the light, traffic light, le feu de circulation. Oh Lord. Make a right, droite. Ensuite, go straight, droite. I said to myself, Jesus, be a fence, Muhammad, come down. I don't know how we are going to do this. Then at the time, before I, came in love with my natural hair, I used to have these crazy wigs, not wigs, weaves. And I go to a store and this Quebec lady, white lady, taps me and she's like, tabernoche, t'es donc ben écœurante. I was like, girl, hold on. Let me beat this. Oui, toi, tu es qui pour m'écœurer? Je vais te battre. And she's like, madame, I was like, vous me connaissez? On a gardé les pigeons ensemble, on a fait pousser les pentales ensemble. Moi, je suis écœurante, comment ça va pas chez vous? Vous, on vient, on paye les impôts pour vous et puis vous nous insultez. Madame, c'est un compliment. Oh, a compliment. What, you should have just said so. Look at me taking off my earrings, about to be deported for violence at Ratemans. So you have these moments of understanding that language, again, for those who are from the LGBTQ. So I'm having a conversation with some friends and I'm like, this is the French word for flip-flop is tapette. The French word in Ivory Coast is tapette, which is I don't know if it's a derogatory word. And again, I'm not trying to offend anyone. So I'm over here like, oh, I'm going to go get these shoes. And they're like, Aïssata, we thought you were more open to that. I was like, what do you mean? You can't say that. That's disrespectful. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you think I just carry gay people in my closet? No, it's a shoe. Oh, so there are these moments of realizing that language, and I was saying earlier, culture, class. So as a Ivorian who has a very Parisian way of communicating in French, to come to Quebec that has blocked Parisian French and has made their own Quebec French their own way, it's fascinating till this day. I still learn new ways, and I'm getting my ears comfortable with the accents and understanding that the way people speak in Montreal has nothing to do with the way people speak in Quebec City. Articles, and Ivorians were known, we don't even use article, we'll just say car, we won't say the car. And then you come here and then they're changing the sex of it. So a bus is female and you're like, why? It's an automobile. Anyway, so it's particular as a Francophone being brought here because I'm Francophone and having a culture shock because the francophone-iality, if I can use that word, and I just invented it, it creates a gap. So I find myself being more comfortable speaking English because the French is frictional. We're not speaking the same French. We're not having the same, what is the word? When I say the word, the image behind the word or what I'm projecting is not the same as what you're receiving. So there's a lot of culture exchange years later. And I don't know that this makes life easy for Ivorians who come here. I'm sure those who mate with non-Ivorians stay, or those who find Ivorians and other Africans, they find a way to stay. But there's always this desire to go back or elsewhere just to facilitate communication. So I don't know if I answered your question, Naila.
Thank you so much. We have 8 more minutes, but we have 2 more questions that I'm going to ask you. But if anyone has a last question that is burning, please send it to Aisha or Julia. But 2 people actually ask you, because you mentioned that you're from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. Which country do you miss the most, Ghana or Cote d'Ivoire?
Can I be honest? Senegal.
Ooh.
So back to the way we look. I'll meet Africans. My name is Aïssata. You're Senegalese. No. Malienne. No. Guinean? No. You sure you're not Senegalese? I was like, wait up, hold up. All the countries of the CEDEAO, you're gonna stop at 3? You're not even gonna give me Burkina. You're not even gonna give me Côte d'Ivoire. You're not gonna give me Niger. We're gonna stop at Senegal, Mali, Guinea. Mind you, Guinea, those my people come from, and I'm always flattered, my little ego, pretty girl, because Guinea in Susu means pretty woman. So whenever people say you're Guinean, I was like, look at, give it to me. Give it. Yes, I wish. Guinea, come claim me. But no. So Senegal has been my country of adoption. Senegalese people have loved on me. We have a love relationship, and they have their flying lives together. For those who don't know, there is a straight flight, Delta, from, I'm not that Delta's paying me, but if they want to, holler at your girl. Delta has these straight flights from New York to Dakar and to Lagos, actually. You know how much money Delta makes from these African flights? They can have 0 money, but then from November till January, those straight flights from Dakar and Lagos, they make their money on that. So when I found those flights and I get to Dakar and the airport is nice, and the shout out to the custom gentlemen at Dakar, they will have you feeling yourself. Ooh. Anyway, I digress. And so Dakar, Senegal just loves on me, the food, the people, the culture. And so actually I vacation a lot in Senegal. And please, for those of us who are bougie Black, vacation in Africa, vacation in Africa. Let us get over Cuba and the horrible food. Go home, go ski, I ski. So ski, you can ski in Morocco. Ski in Morocco. Go to Tanzania. Oh my God, Dar es Salaam, we are coming for you. Go to Zanzibar. The best luxury hotels are in Madagascar. Go to the Seychelles. Go to Senegal. Question. Does anybody know anyone from Guinea-Bissau? Isn't that interesting? All these countries, we have Rwandese, we have people from the Maghreb, and there are some countries we never see. Guinea-Bissau is one of those countries I am dying to be at a table and have someone, not from Guinea-Conakry, not from Guinea Equatorial, but Guinea-Bissau. They're one of the few Portuguese-speaking countries in West Africa, aside Cap Verde. We don't see them. So that's another thing. As Africans, let's look. Let's check the boxes. Let's not always be the Ivorians, the Ghanaians, the Rwandese, the Senegalese, the Guinean, and then the Maghrébins, the Maroc and the Algerie, and the Tunisians. Let's go find our other friends and cousins, the Namibians and the Zambians. When was the last time you saw somebody from Zambia? Yeah, I thought so. So it's one of those things where let's be proactive and try to understand let's be representative. Let's find out what they do, what they enjoy, but back to my countries, Senegal. I love Ivory Coast, home, you know, and I can't wait to get on the flight to go home. In Ghana, we're going to learn. Ghana and I, we're learning to enjoy ourselves, especially with the spotlight on Ghanaians and Nigerians outside. But in all honesty, Senegal. So Senegal people, you got me.
Awesome. Great, great. So in the 4 minutes we have, I am wondering if you can answer, Sako, one piece of advice that you would give your younger self. And also someone else wanted to know, Kamsi wanted to know if you can tell us a little bit about your research.
Okay, so I'm going to start with my research and I'll finish with what would I tell myself? So I currently work in addiction medicine. So my job is to, So imagine this, you have doctors who have questions and they want to find out how they can improve the quality of the care that they are offering to individuals who suffer from addiction. So addiction, whether it's opioid use, psychostimulants, you name it, alcohol, cigarettes, cannabis. I'm mostly in hard painkillers, so opioids, fentanyl, etc. And they're trying to understand that I see this in the ER. How do I improve it? And I do it in a systematic and scientific way. I come in, I ask, do you have the money? Do you have the protocol? Do you have the capacity to answer this question? So I engage the whole process by which we begin research, ethics, protocol, funding, having the plan, having the publication plan, having the structure, how we're going to collect the data. Are we looking at a molecule? So are we looking at medication? So just the process by which we start with the question and how do we answer it? And once we have the answer, what do we do to make sure that the individuals in the clinical world are aware that we've done this? Can they replicate it? So I take the recipe of my project, I publish it so others can try it. So this is what we call evidence-based, and then we can implement it clinically as something that happens. I'll give you a simple example of something that I did recently. It's called the Suboxide Project. So we're in the middle of a overdose crisis on top of the opioids. So you have individuals that are dying of overdoses, right? So how can we be proactive in that? So in the ER, when an individual comes in through the ambulance having suffered an overdose, what can we do? When naloxone, if you have an opiate overdose, can be administered to you, and if you're going to be an active drug user, you should systematically have a naloxone, just like you should have a fire extinguisher in your house. Parentheses, if you have a house right now and you're in North America, please have somebody get you a fire extinguisher. You have no idea how much that will save your life. Closing parentheses. So give naloxone at the ER, and then quickly do a triage as to, does this person have symptoms of acute opioid use disorder? If so, fill this out, get them in contact with the doctor, give them a prescription to start helping them with their drug addiction, and bam, we might help this person not come back with another overdose and hopefully avoid a fatal overdose. You do the project, you do it quickly, you document everything, you put a report together, you go to the director of clinical practices at the hospital, you say, here are my numbers. I trained this many nurses, I did this in 3 ERs, this is the impact that we had, and this is the patient satisfaction survey. Let's make this something normal. You take this up to the ministry and you move forward. I have a lot of COVID-19 projects right now, trying to understand what individuals who use drugs are dealing with. Everything has stopped. So we're seeing a rise in HIV, we're seeing a rise in hepatitis C, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, blood infections, because the individuals don't have access to the data. So my job is to take what we're seeing and see that it's not an exception, but it is generalized in a particular population, and get the numbers, understand the correlation between different determinants for individuals who use substances, and how the data can have an impact on the quality and the organization of the care, and to make sure that it improves the lives of the individuals that come to us at the hospital for care, and also make sure that we're better using the molecules, the drugs that we have. So I also integrate phase 4 pharmaceutical trials. So when we have drugs that work, we know they work, but the way in which they're prescribed don't give the results that the drug producers want, and that is because people aren't taking their medication as prescribed. It's as if, you take your birth control pill once every other day and you're mad that you got pregnant. It says take every day at the exact same time and you will have the results wanted. If you don't, it's not going to happen. Same thing. So that's pretty much my research. It's very broad. I do projects in Quebec, in the, mostly I'm responsible for the Atlantic provinces. So I have 5 provinces under me. I do national projects and also with the clinical trials network in the US. So NIH and NIDA funded projects. And I have some projects with Australia because Australia is the leader in all projects related to hepatitis. And we're looking to enter into Egypt because Egypt has the highest rate of hepatitis C infections on the continent. And thank you for that question. And for the, why would I tell my younger self? You're going to be fine. And don't tell your mother everything. I would tell my 17-year-old self, there's some things mama does not need to know. Your parents will never forget nothing. If you tell her I had a fight with Aminatu, and then 2 years later you're chilling with Aminatu, you trust that girl? Didn't she take your shoe? When mommy, it was a shoe. Can we get over it? No, your mother will never forget anything. You know, don't tell your mom you like short, light-skinned boys, and then you show up with a tall black-skinned boy, and she's like, my feet. What happened? Don't let yourself grow. Stay focused and pick your battles, you know. But I tell my younger self, you're gonna be okay, and ask questions. This is something that I wish I had done more. Ask questions. I always assumed that this person did this and they got there, and I realized that, oh no, I was in the elevator talking out loud, and this person heard me and told me that their uncle had a job at Ericsson and I should meet him, and that's how it happened. And you'd be surprised how many people will tell you that they got in through a bathroom conversation till bumping into someone at the cheese aisle or, you know, anything. So do not underestimate very mundane situations that were the liftoff for something. So I would tell my younger self, speak, ask questions, do not be embarrassed, state your fear. So if you're going to speak to someone and say, you know, I don't want to offend you, or I'm not sure, state that and then move forward. And don't be afraid to fall and to fail. If it didn't work, it is okay. It does not mean that you're less. It does not mean that you're not smart. It does not mean that you are not deserving. It just means that this time was not the good time. Learn, do it again. If it doesn't work, learn, do it again. I'm not saying this if you're going to beat yourself up and be violent towards yourself and be in a toxic situation. That's not what I'm saying. If you're determined to be a doctor and you're failing and you're just gorish and you're making yourself sick and you don't understand that, that's different. But if you want to aspire to be an entrepreneur, if you're interested in investing, if you're interested in becoming an engineer, if you're interested in achieving something, if you want to be a writer, if you want to be in music, and your people are saying no, that's okay. I actually, for a point in time, had the 100 no rule. I was looking for people to say no to me 100 times, and I would gift myself something. Did I get to the 100 no's? No, but it was something to get over the no, that they weren't saying no to me. They were saying no to the possibility of something that I could offer. So I would say that to myself. Do not take rejection as rejection of you as the totality of who you are as an individual, but it's no to what it is that you are offering. So take a step back, reshape the offer, improve the offer, and come back. And if this is not the person or the space for you, divert course and try something different. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to try, and also get insurance. It's a lot easier to hurt yourself if you know you have insurance. Buy good shoes. I see some of you with poor quality shoes and you know you have better money than that. Invest in good shoes, good coats, good deodorant. There's nothing like stressing and not smelling good. That will kill your confidence. So good deodorant. I tell my 17-year-old self, don't that deodorant, that good stress. Not being silly right now. But
well, thank you so much, Aïssata, for finishing us on a good note. We are so empowered, so grateful for the knowledge you've poured us in. I am so glad that we're recording today so that way we can look back and take all those lessons in. I was trying to scramble, but I think I have showed, you know, a small notebook. But thank you so much for your knowledge, for your candid, your humor, your rich experiences, and for being someone we can relate to. It feels like you're just a sister across the room that we can reach out to. So we'll be happy to have you again in many, many, many events that we're going to have. So
and thank you, Alice. And I wanted to step in and say that, you know, don't be afraid. There's so many of us out here who have, and I know I'm taking space. I'll just quick anecdote. So this November, I lost somebody that was like a dad to me, and I went back to Dakar, and I had 3 conversations with mothers who were mad that their daughters had chosen not to go straight to get their master's. And I stepped in and I said, as an employer, your child with their BA at McGill means nothing to me. That degree is not proof to me as an employer that they can do the job. It means nothing. So the best I'm gonna pay them is maybe $24.50. That's barely $43,000 a year. That's it with the BA from McGill. And that's the truth from an employer. What I need is somebody that can show me they have the skill set to integrate the knowledge and to learn. I'm more interested in investing in someone that has the capacity and the skill set to learn, that is flexible, that can deal with stress, that can learn quickly, that can apply, that is ethical, that can understand, as opposed to somebody who spent 4 years doing a degree that I don't care. You may have paid for this. It means nothing to me. So ask someone, look for someone who is in a position that you might want to be in, and ask them how they got here. Because the way I got to be a director of program at the CHU, you wouldn't believe it, because I did sociology. This is a job mostly for somebody who did medicine. All my peers have MDs and PhDs, but they're not running the projects that I am. So do not be afraid to expect non-linear ways of getting to a destination. Ask. If you see someone who's melanated and she's female or male, just ask her, invite them out to coffee. They'll probably pay for it. And just ask them, how did you get here? And like, tell me, like, how much did it cost? What did you do? What did you tell your parents? How did you organize? How much did you save? What was the struggle like? You know, don't forget to ask those questions. It may not be the same structure for you, but it might give you the safety net and the little feeling that your parachute is going to work when you jump, as opposed to, should I even get on this plane? Is bungee jumping a good option? You know what I mean? Not bungee jumping, skydiving. So don't be afraid, because we're here. Well, I'm hiding. But for those who are on IG or whatever, ask people who have sisters or cousins who have been in Canada and who are professionals and who are feeling, what's the word? Accomplished. That is the word. Who feel accomplished, even though they're not done. I'm nowhere near where I want to be, but I'm happy and content with the growth that I'm going through, and happy to share my experiences, and hopefully that it might help someone else. So reach out. Don't be afraid.
all right. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was great.
Yeah.
All great. Check in with yourselves. Go out, speak, hydrate, take care of yourself, listen to some good music, listen to some good podcasts, put some light and joy in your life. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Say kind words to yourself. Pray kind things to yourself. Say kind things to others. You know, at these difficult times, be kind to one another, not to one another. Well, yeah, but be kind to yourself, okay? And be well, take care, wear your masks, and laugh. Please laugh. We need to laugh.
Thank you so much, Aïssata. Oh, thank you. You're highlighting again the reason why we wanted to talk to the diaspora this weekend, to have an empowering voice on how we show up here in Canada and in Quebec in particular. So thank you for your knowledge.
Thank you for having me. Everybody have a wonderful, blessed afternoon. Be well, and my best to the other panelists. I'm sure it's going to be a great followed conversation.
Definitely. Thank you. Right. So I wanted to quickly invite Kamsi, our VP Media, to announce the winner of the competition we're having on Instagram. So Kamsi is going to come in a few minutes. And after we've done that, we're going to have a few minutes to stretch, grab a cup of water or coffee if you need, use the washroom, whatever you need to do. And then we'll be back for the panel. So Kamsi, you are up.
Hello, I'm just going to share my screen. Can you guys see my screen? No, okay.
Not yet.
Okay, I think it should work now.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Drum rolls.
Because when I applied to come over here, do I write parents, grandparents?
Congratulations to Miss Kelly. We'll be in contact with you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Nisi, if you're in the audience, we'll be in contact with you soon to give you your prize. And we thank everyone who participated. It was really fun to read your post. Okay, so I'm going to play us some music while you go grab whenever you need to do to stretch out, and we'll be back here at 3 p.m.
Boss man, you go down so cool. When the bed do they enter body. All the girl them go shake their body. They go shake their body. Oluwabana mukbona belly. They mukbona belly. You know the money you take up police. Me I they love you gone. Say I take grace and no number, but I just spray you the money on your mouth. You supposed to know, say me no be newcomer. So my baby make you no go dollar, no go dollar. When the bed do they enter body, all the girl them go shake their body. They go shake their body. Oluwabana mukbona belly. They mukbona belly. You know the money you take up police. Me and they love you gone. As I they sing, they feel the pulse. Make all the people jump around. Make you they listen well because I know if you shout. No joking around. Listen, make I tell you what it's all about. I know you tell you I see what I ain't the coconut. You sit down inside boss, you say you be boss. Oh yeah, look da da da. Look da da da. Say suma picking with the para with the gaga. Kilo shell ba ba ba. Oh look da da da. Look da da da. Say suma picking with the para with the gaga. Kilo no shall like ba. When the bed they enter body, enter body. On the girl them go shake their body, they go shake their body. Oluwa bona mo go na belly, go na. You get money, you take up police. Baby, they love you gone.
It's okay, only keep okay. Oh, the brain love me, shame over okay. Oh, the judge, oh, the one case, shape out that in any money that we go. What's it bad now? What's the elevate? Oh, me, go to Ebony. I'm bad belly, want to suffocate. With the bad doing the jellyfish. All I told me, I'm a party with you. Oh, I told me, I'm a party with you. What the Toby and my body was it? Body was it? Is my body was it? What's it bad now? What's it bad now? What's it bad? What's it bad now? What's it bad? No, bitch. What's it no, bitch. What's it no, bitch. What's it no, what's it bad now? What's the yellow bitch? What's it bad now? What's the yellow bitch? What's it bad now? What's the yellow bitch? Bad now? What's the yellow bitch?
a force. Yeah, blessings we are reap and we coursing on full. Oh, we not rise and boast. Yeah, we give thanks like we need it the most. We have to give thanks like we really supposed to be thankful. Blessings all for my life and my thank God for the journey, the earnings are just for the plus. Yeah, and gratitude is a must. Yeah, me see blessings fall by my right hand. But I toast with the friends we take off every load. One time did sit down in a class and we bored then only said the road and me go on with the road. Third form, me say me try a thing. And you know it formed up to be a fire thing. Now up on stage with chronics I sing. Yeah, see me all diggy soon get the higher ring. Like hello brother, you say I had to shut ya. Saw your poster, spectacular photo. Keep it burning, yes that's the motto. If you need a butter, pass through your soul to gamble in a life man. Me have to thank God for the journey, the earnings are just for the plus. Yeah, and gratitude is a must. Yeah, me see blessings fall by my right hand. But I toast to the friends we take off every load. One time they sit down in a class and we bored then only said the road and we go on with it, go on with it. Just so our blessings upon me. And send me to tell them a story. Just so our blessings upon me. And that's how I made to give him the glory. I'm me delighted. Jah knows my passion ignited. Got the music get me excited. I'm coming like a potion. Blessings all for my life and my thank God for the journey, the earnings are just for the plus. Yeah, and gratitude is a must. Yeah, me see blessings fall by my right hand. But I toast for the friends we take off every load. One time did sit down in a class and we bored then only said the road and me go on with the road. Toast, yeah, yeah, yeah. Toast. Oh, we not rise and boast. Yeah, we give thanks. We have to give thanks like we really supposed to be thankful. Blessings all for my life and my thank God for the journey, the earnings are just for the plus. Yeah, and gratitude is a must. Yeah, me see blessings fall by my right hand. But I toast to the friends we take off every load. One time did sit down in a class and we bored then only said the road and me go on with the road. Toast, yeah, yeah, yeah. Toast.
Final day so me say get the pango, get the pango, get the pango, get the pango, the pango, the pango. See that day where we dey shy, that day where we dey shy. See that day where we dey mania, that day where we dey mania. Since 1960, yeah. That day where we dey shy. Since 1930, no. That day where we dey shy. We dey do skeleton. You dey do your body skeleton. We dey do kele we dey do skeleton. Get the freaking money on your body, bunny. Baby girl Pulani, you dey wine follow me. So tell me she meta Kulani, but the bar show they do, you they do Kulani. I say water, dirty pussy carter. Baby girl you know say that's a body bad. If you want to do, then we got the party. Baby girl you know we can never be a partner. We dey do skeleton. You dey do your body skeleton. You dey do we dey do skeleton. Baby, don't you know you're killing me, oh baby. Oh no, baby, don't you know you're killing me, oh baby. See that day where we dey shy, that day where we dey shy. See that day where we dey mania, that day where we dey mania. skeleton, skeleton. You dey do your body skeleton, 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 skeleton. You dey do kelebu, 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 kelebu. You dey do skeleton, 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 skeleton. You say water, water, dirty pussy carter. Baby girl, you know say that's about the bad. If you want to do, then we got the part. Baby girl, you know we can never be apart. Water, dirty pussy carter. Baby girl, you know that's about the bad. If I want to do, then we got the part. Baby girl, you know we can never be apart. Now get the part.
Big smoke up.
You hear me? You hear me, yo?
Gazi. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Asumabo, asumatiza watunga fremia, asuminie, asirunge tiabanu, asuminie, Madam Rebecca banu, asuminie, Dr. John Rollins banu, asuminie, Uncle Kufu banu, asuminie, Kennedy Japan banu. Your daughter, come on, the mommy chance to me so. Now me to me, yo.
Allez, danse en spire, allez, transpire, danse en spire, les mains en l'air, allez, transpire.
Azusini bwevu, afemi ya mamba, azu wanyamia, mejumeya daba daba, meya beziga beshe ubana, ubana nintu. Nabasa, Ningosia, Ninantiambo, Azoe, no one kumi ya mamintiasio. Sao kukuda mbiba nuno, Nanzumi nzuni ya miba nuno. Namie ufami, Arikamari your daughter, Mamandi mami chance no miss you. Now me to me, yo.
Allez, danse en spire, allez, transpire, les mains en l'air, allez, transpire.
My father-in-law, they call me, say, make I can make you chat. Now me call ya, I was here, brandy, but me banny, was size. I say, daddy, oh, banny, dummy, I just say, won't say, and you be son of mommy. I will in the movie, you would dread you. Asumatiza watunga fremia, asuminie, asirunge tiabanu, asuminie, Dr. Kwame that's right banu, asuminie, Mr. Dr. Bori banu, asuminie, Taya Bada Dixon banu, asuminie, Anna Obia Babamba, asuminie, Namie ufami, Arikamari your daughter. Mamandi mami chance no miss you. Now me to me, yo.
Allez, danse en spire, allez, transpire, les mains en l'air, allez, transpire.
All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Can you all hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Yes, great, great. Happy Saturday afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us for day 2 of Africa Speaks. We are so excited. We had a great night last night. We had a good afternoon earlier today, and we are so excited to continue with the conversation. And I'm going to invite Julia who's part of our planning committee, to let us know how the afternoon is going to go, and introduce Mune as well as our moderator for the panel, and then we get going on with the conversation. Julia.
So hello everyone, welcome back from the break. First, I'm going to introduce Mune, then we'll go to the second panel. Then we'll have a word from Antoine Samuel Moffett Alavo that Alice will introduce. Then we'll have our closing remarks. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Mune, who's going to be our moderator for the second panel. So Mune Suishe Mafusire, that goes by Mune, will be entering his final year studying political science with a double minor in African studies and social entrepreneurship. His academic focus has included issues of contemporary Sub-Saharan African international political economy, Afropolitanism, Pan-Africanism, and development. Mune had the honor of leading McGill Desautel's Africa Business Initiative in 2019-2020 as the co-executive director. His role focused on creating a space for students, intellectuals, professionals to gain insight and think critically about business and development on the continent. So this past summer, Mune worked as a strategy and policy intern at the Canada Africa Chamber of Business, CACB. In this role, he was responsible for drafting the CACB's inaugural policy report on Canada's engagement with Africa. So presently, he is a research coordinator for the CACB. In his spare time, he enjoys reading the news, listening to South African house and amapiano music. So I'm going to pass it to Mune.
Thank you for the introduction, Julia. I'm super excited to be here today, joined by our illustrious guests. So I guess I'll just start by saying good afternoon, good evening to all our listeners across the globe. I think that's one of the benefits that we have by holding this virtually, is that we get to reach out to as many people as we possibly can. And I think that's a wonderful thing. So as mentioned, my name is Munesu Ishe Mafusire, go by Mune. I'm from Zimbabwe, and I'm super happy to have our illustrious panelists today. So to conclude this conference, which started yesterday, we're going to get our panelists to sort of, join on their successful paths and navigate in the space of being an African diaspora, and who tend to be underrepresented in a lot of institutional spaces. So our panelists are going to draw on their personal experiences, their successes, and some of the challenges that they have, as well as offering some of the resources and part of the recommendations as students as we move on to our professional careers, or even just as we try to understand our institution here at McGill. So this panel is essentially going to be divided into two segments. Firstly, we're going to focus on the challenges of being an African in the diaspora. And then the second thing we're going to focus on is how we get to navigate such a complicated space here in Canada as both an African migrant and being Black in the diaspora. So before we get into our panel, I'm going to briefly introduce our guests. So I'm going to start with Joy Chianu. So Joy Chianu graduated from McGill in 2018 with a bachelor's in chemical engineering. As a young African from Nigeria, she felt a lack of representation, and being actively involved in MAS, which is the McGill African Student Society, and the National Society of Black Engineers provided her with a sense of community during her course here at McGill. Currently, Joy works at Jana Corporation, an engineering firm in Toronto, and volunteers at the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers, where she advocates for inclusion of members from minority groups in STEM, and she's specifically on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Secondly, we have our illustrious professor here at McGill, Dr. Ni Adi, and he is the Associate Director of Africa Outreach and a Senior Advisor to the Deputy Provost of Student Life and Learning here at McGill. He obtained his PhD from Stanford Graduate School of Education, where he specialized in organization studies and international comparative education. He has a BA in economics from Swarthmore College and a Master in Public Affairs from Princeton University. In his current role, he develops, manages, and assesses cross-sector partnerships, training, and applied research, supporting McGill Mastercard scholars' transitions from academic studies to entrepreneurship and employment for impact in Africa. Dr. Nee Addy also teaches at the Max Bell, which is a new school of public policy at McGill, and in the African Studies program. He has previously been the assistant a professor of research at Desautels faculty, as well as the Institute of the Study of International Development. We also have our last but not least panelist, Achille Ubalinjoro. Mr. Achille Ubalinjoro is the managing director and project executive consultant at Kabera Consulting. He's passionate about linking business results to a delivery system based on a combination of industry best practice and world-class project management. And he earned his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering with a specialization in computer-aided design. That's quite interesting. And manufacturing at the École Polytechnique de Montréal. And he joined Bombardier Aerospace, where he worked from 1995 to 2004. And he's held various positions at Bombardier in engineering, manufacturing, IT, and he has held various roles at Bombardier. He also pursued an MBA in strategic management at the University of Concordia in 2003, and this has led him to his current role as the managing director of Kabera. So as we are gathered here today, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, we are really trying to look at the different contours of really being an African. I think a lot of people, before they get to Canada, we have lots of different perceptions of what that means. And oftentimes, maybe our idealized versions of Canada and the realities are really at odds. We do find it difficult sometimes to navigate these spaces. And it's really wonderful to have some of our guests and our panelists today that have made great careers in Canada. And so learning from best practices and how we can all enable each other to succeed here in Canada, or wherever we may decide to end up. I think learning from some of our elders, if I can put it that way, is really beneficial. So if I could start off with my first question, which I think is perhaps a loaded question and is very topical, given what happened in 2020. A lot of people will claim it as the year for the Black awakening again. I think we've had many of those years, but in particular, 2020 was one of those moments again where we really got galvanized as the community. Last year, in 2020, there was the heinous murder of George Floyd in the United States. We have to contend with sort of the race dynamics that happen here in the West. And for Africans growing up on the continent, being Black is not necessarily an identity that we have, or that we think of when we're on the continent. So I just wanted to know from our panelists, when was that moment when you realized that you are Black? I guess on my screen, I'll start with Professor Nee Addy.
Yes, thanks very much to everyone. It's great to be here. Thanks for all the organizing. I know there's a lot of work that you've been doing with this. And Mune, that's a quite an interesting question. So the first time I remember I consider myself being Black, I'll say, so what comes to my mind is being in an economics class at Swarthmore, which is where I did my undergrad work. And there was a professor was talking about something, and it was related to preferences, job preferences. And he was essentially saying that, wage gaps and all of that, when it comes to lower Black people having lower wages, it was about revealed preferences. And I remember thinking to myself, what is this guy smoking, right? And at that point, I remember, when you have a situation where you're looking for somebody to say, hold up, did this guy just say that? Black people have lower wages because those are their preferences? So I was looking around and I realized, holy moly, I'm the only Black person in this class, right? So I mean, there've been other moments, where you start to realize, hold up. But for me, that's what, when you ask this question, that's what comes to my mind right away.
Right. Yeah. No. I think that's a lot of the people experience, especially in this chat here at McGill. As African migrants, we get into classes, and I mean, the way that they discuss, the Black identity or being African is really outlandish. So I'll move the question to Mr. Achille Ubalenjoro. And I would like to know, when was that moment when you had that realization that I am Black?
Yeah, actually, it's a very interesting question. But I think in my case, it started actually very early in my childhood, because even though I left the continent very young, at 6 years of age, I'm from Rwanda originally, but I mean, I had the privilege of going to a private school, and most of the kids there were white Belgians, mostly, because Rwanda is a former Belgian colony. So for me, it started very early in terms of, realizing that, hey, even though I come in this country where we're the majority, all of a sudden in this context, I felt a major difference in terms of how we were treated. And it's even worse because you're in your own country, right? So my self-awareness started very early, in terms of being different, even though you're in a majority context, but in that specific context, right? Even though it's a privileged context, you realize that there's other factors that you'll need to take into account as you progress in life. So very, very early in my childhood. And you'll see in the discussions we'll have later on, it's sort of shaped me in terms of how I address certain things with regards to different cultures, race, and how you posture, the posture that you take when you're in front of others that see you differently.
Yeah, I think that what you've just mentioned also sort of resonates a little bit with my own experience as well, is that my first experience of realizing that I was Black was also at a private school on the continent, whereby you may be surrounded by a lot of, say, white students, and you already see the race dynamics very, very much expressed. And so there's a lot of similarities between being back on the continent and having that privileged life, as you mentioned, and coming here and still sort of, continuing to see that dynamic at play, maybe more expressed. And Joy, I'll now take the question to you here as well. When was that moment for you?
Yeah, I think similar to you, Mune and Achille, it was in high school. So I went to private school, but not on the continent. I went to private school in the UK, and I just felt like sometimes there'll be sometimes when a question will be asked or something will be made in class, and you feel like everyone is looking at you, or everything's been like it's up to you to answer the question. So that realization that you're kind of like representing your continent and your people, it's like you're like, wow, there's nobody else you guys can like ask this question. No one else can answer this question. It's just me in this room that has to carry the burden, right? At that time, carry the burden of being the spokesperson for the continent. Yeah, I'll say yeah.
Yeah. And I think just as you mentioned that as well, like just that reality of being expected to know everything about anything that is ongoing at home is a really frustrating experience, because there is no one that can possibly know everything about anything that's going on. So just being able to navigate that is a very interesting space. So yesterday on our panel, the panel that happened yesterday, we had Kariuki, who's a McGill doctoral researcher, and he mentioned this idea in Kenya, or a term which I forget now, but essentially it references how we may idealize sort of the Western world in terms of its progressiveness or abundance of opportunities. However, we do know that it's not that simple or easy making it in the diaspora. We all have very diverse experiences. So I wanted to know, what are some of the challenges that you've encountered when you migrated here to Canada? And I think I'll switch the rotation a little bit here. I'll start with Joy, if you can just talk about some of the challenges that you had when you first immigrated to Canada.
Okay, perhaps the most important one is the food. The food is very different. It took a while to realize I cannot eat yam like a regular person, or if you want to find yam, you have to travel a long distance to look for it. Aside from that, I think it's just feeling that you're alone. So when I moved here, when I moved to Canada, I was 18. So I didn't know anybody who was from Nigeria, not to talk of like being from the continent, right? And I had to really kind of like form my own community. So by partaking in like different organizations, right? So yeah, like just feeling alone and not knowing anybody aside from yourself, that's from your country or from Africa. Yeah.
Right, and I think that's something that we'll also just build on in the conversation as well, just about that experience of loneliness, and not knowing really like who to turn to, especially in a space where we don't see a lot of people that look like ourselves, and how that's super difficult. And so Achille, I'll also just move on to you here with this question. What are some of the challenges that you identified as you moved here to Canada?
I mean, again, in this respect, I was a bit of lucky compared to others. So I moved here 31 years ago because my brother had studied in Quebec, in Sherbrooke, to be exact. And so when I came, I did find he had left already, but he had also convinced my sister to come and study at McGill. Actually, she did a PhD at McGill. And instinctively, in all the countries that I go, and including Canada when I first arrived 30 years ago, I tried to connect with my community, so the Rwandan community, expanded it to our close neighbors, Burundi. And then beyond that, when I was at Polytechnique, I was also an active member of the African Students Association. So I would say all of that made for, I would say, a relatively very good integration into Canadian society. And I also forced myself to, engage with, the locals. And it was an interesting experience as well, because there's different sets of locals, right? So you have the Montrealers, born and raised, and then you have the guys coming from the countryside, from the within the rest of the province, and they have as much a challenge coming into Montreal as us coming from Africa. And actually, it was interesting. One of my friends, a lady from Saint-Jean-Port-Joli, which is up north in Quebec. I mean, I didn't come directly from Africa. I was actually studied in France before coming here. And for me, coming to Montreal was relaxing. I lived in Paris, and the people there, how things are in Europe. Not the most friendly context for Africans. And then here, things were, the bus driver was saying hi to me when I came into the bus. I go to the library, the lady says hi. I say, what's wrong with these people, And then my friend who was coming from the up north, she was stressed. She couldn't handle the context of Montreal. So you see a different perspective, right? And in that, from that perspective, my introduction to Montreal went well. And also in the future, when we talk about our careers respectively, see us when we come here, we migrate. But I also I had the privilege of going to China, Japan as an expat, right? So in that case, they call us expats when we're coming from the West to other Western countries. And I hope we'll have the opportunity to discuss, that aspect as well.
Great. Yeah, and I think maybe I just want to pursue that just a little bit more, because you talk about still having a diverse set of experiences with people that were even just in Quebec and also having their shock.
Exactly.
In here. Do you maybe see any sort of differentiated experience as well, just as an African student at Polytechnique?
Yes, of course. I mean, Polytechnique, especially at the time, we were not that many African students, right? And so, I mean, frankly, there was sort of a ghetto, Africans were on one side, the Arabic students were on their side, the Chinese on their side, and then you had the majority Quebecois, Francophone. But then there were islands of, I would say, integration, right? So there were student committees where, for example, there's one that sent students to do development projects so a lot in South America because it was the cheapest. But collectively, the students from the members from the African Students Association, we collectively decided to integrate those groups because we needed to have allies, right? So we did not want to be stuck in the ghetto. And so that also allowed us to connect, with those allies. And actually, it was a great experience because, first of all, they were most of the time very open people, right? These are young kids deciding to go and do development projects in South America. And eventually, we did convince them that despite the cost, projects also could be done in Africa. So we expanded basically our network, and we expanded our circle of allies, right? At one point, I remember the Lebanese students, for some reason, they managed to get their hands on some of the exams. So we were wondering how come they were getting, such good grades. Yeah, we figured it out, and then, we became friends with them. So that's also part of the Montreal experience. In terms of you need to get yourself, go out of your comfort zone, right? Don't spend 4 years in university and be surrounded by people that look like you, right? Yes, it's important to have, and I was very proud of my African heritage, and we organized international food festivals where we invited others to come and taste our food, but at the same time, we need to get out of our comfort zone.
Yeah, that's a very unique experience in terms of even just like allyship, because even here at McGill as well, when we think about just trying to even just advance our interests, right, as students from the continent or as Black students, that idea of allyship is actually a very key component. And Professor Nee, so we're still on the question of how you immigrated to Canada and sort of how you found your experience here. But I think maybe even before we get to Canada, because you have two experiences from my understanding, from the US and then Canada. So maybe you could talk about like the US, your experience in immigrating to the US and then Canada, and potentially the differences that you might have encountered between the two.
Yeah, so I think hearing Achille is interesting because I see a mix, some of those experiences, right? So I hear what Joy talks about. It sounds similar to some of my experiences when I initially moved to the US. The thing in my case, though, is in the US, I have close extended family, right? So moving from Ghana initially to the US, I'd also been pretty prepared. I have, and we'll talk about this down the line, but close mentors, who are family members. I have uncles who really prepared me. I still remember one of my uncles, he's late now, Kwesi Gigienyo, who had studied in the UK, but also did have some stints in the US as well. And I still remember him having that conversation, right, about race and talking to me about don't let it get to you, right? So I feel like I was very well prepared. I mean, relative to others that I encountered. My other uncles, I spent time in Washington D.C. For me, D.C. was home away from home to that extent. I had uncles, my Uncle Charles. I also had relatives elsewhere, Professor Anani Gigienyo and also Professor Victor Gigienyo, who had also prepared me. I mean, some of their work, some of them had been involved in the civil rights movement, right? And so there was quite a bit of, I really appreciated that privilege of being prepared. Even the idea of Blackness, I mean, obviously, they had talked to me about issues of race. So yes, I think to some degree, cognitively, I had some understanding of it. It's different when you experience it, right? But they were there. I think in my case, there was quite a lot of support system in trying to navigate. It was different when I went to university because they weren't there. I mean, it was Swarthmore was its own space, and man had to learn, right? So I already talked about the experiences in class, but just adjusting the food, enjoy, so having to figure out, I have to go to West Philadelphia to get the yams, making those trips with colleagues. So that was the US experience. I mean, there was also creating new networks. Again, there, having to be, having to take some action, assertiveness, but then also having faculty and staff at Swarthmore, Black faculty and staff who were very supportive. I had the director of our health center, Dr. Linda Eccles. I call her my adoptive mother, right? She was someone who would have us come to her house, and it was mostly the internationals and Black students. It was always great because we go there, and that's where we just let loose, right? We felt at home. And we're also fortunate, in our case at Swarthmore, we had a Black cultural center, and that was an amazing space because it helped us to really ask questions. Africans, Caribbeans, African Americans were very diverse, and you are all put together into this idea of Blackness, right? And we don't know, we're still learning about each other. So it was a very important space to actually learn each other without everybody sort of looking at us, because we had questions, but you've been told you're Black. And so those were things that, were things that we had to learn, right? Now moving to Canada, for me, I didn't, it was a difficult decision to make. I have my family in the US. It was also, I moved here largely to some degree, it was also had to do with adventure, right? I had a friend, I remember when I was at Stanford, some folks from the Canadian government came to recruit. They wanted skilled people to come out here. And I had a friend who said, why don't we just, let's throw a hat in there. And so, I had other friends who had also talked about that before. So anyway, I ended up doing that. So when I became a skilled immigrant to Canada, I had to think about it. Do I really want to, leave my family behind in the US, all of that, and then move here? In the end, I chose to do it because I thought there were some opportunities. I mean, this was a chance. You're young. It's a chance to explore. So moving here was very difficult in that sense, right? Because I had pretty much a good life. I had my family around, everything. So coming here, though, I didn't know anyone, right? What was helpful is that, for example, my uncle, Professor Anani, he's also now late, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the mentorship that I got from those people. He opened his networks. He had a couple of friends, Dr. Nikwao, who is a distinguished McGill alumnus from the medical school, who's here. And so when I moved here, there are a couple of people I met. I met someone like him. I also met another Ghanaian, Dr. Yao. So Yao was also someone who opened networks for me, right? So it was building on some of these networks. The other thing I did, and I'll suggest this to anyone as you're traveling, if you're moving anywhere, I also looked at the alumni networks, the formal alumni networks of my schools, actually. And I reached out to people. I emailed them, said, you know what, I'm moving to Montreal. I don't know anyone really, but I looked at the alumni network, and you live here, so can we meet for coffee, right? It was very great because people were very willing to meet. So I think that's also something that I'll sort of that experience of immigrating, not knowing people. I've had a situation where in the US, yes, I knew I had family. Here it was different, but having to sort of create that family, well, not necessarily family, but community out here.
Right. That's a very comprehensive answer, and it was sort of building into some of the questions that I had later as well, which was actually a quote that I got as well from James Baldwin, who's an American novelist, and he says, "To be Black and conscious can be at a constant state of rage." And you talk about how your uncle, I believe was your uncle, who was sort of telling you to sort of be able to manage that dynamic of race and also trying to move. And I think we've all mentioned here as well, sort of, how community plays into us, sort of being able to like regulate those emotions, being able to be at home and feel that comfort. And I know that this, I haven't started working yet, but my impression is that this does not change when you get into the professional work experience. And so I really wanted to get some of your impressions of, well, from a work experience, what should young Africans be expecting when they go into the workplace? Is it the same? Is it different? Is it better? Can you sort of develop some ideas on this question? I'll start again with Joy here.
Yeah, so I'm fairly new to the work, being a professional. So I've just worked for over just less than 2 years now. And I would say it's different because, I mean, with a school like McGill, you know that you can still find Africans there, you know, like it's an opportunity, you can still there's still a community, there's still like there are organizations you can join to, you know, find people like you or people who think like you. In a workplace, it's not exactly the same, you know, like it's a structure for like professionals to get the job done, to like, you know. So in my case now, I think I'm currently the only Black person in my company. So you can't create a community of yourself. Like there's no organization to join to express yourself. You are you. So that's where like I found that I had to find things outside of my workplace to you know, have that sense of, you know, camaraderie with people from the continent. So I think that's been my experience so far. Like it's not, you don't really have as many opportunity to meet people within your workplace that are like you. So you have to actually venture out and be more active with trying to find more Africans to connect with. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's just to remind our audience here again, Joy is a Black woman engineer, and I mean we don't have too many of those. So I just want to say that's just amazing, and you know, being able to be in that space and perhaps not have people around you. I mean, it takes a lot of courage in that sense. Achille, you worked at Bombardier in Montreal, and it is a Quebec company. What is it that maybe students that are looking into get into sort of, you know, the Quebec space, the Quebec professional experience, what should they expect? Because perhaps that might be even different from maybe someone who's trying to go to Ontario. So maybe can you tell us a little bit about Quebec? What is the professional like of Quebec?
Yeah, actually, if I take my example at Bombardier, I stayed there, I worked there for 9 years. And, you know, first thing is we also need to bring our own culture with us, right? So in my case, even though same as Joy, I was the only Black person, at least in my group, but I met other Black people in other departments. But you know, I obviously approached people that had, you know, the same similar cultural, or we were close culturally. So there was a French guy, there was a Lebanese guy, and there was a Quebecois who seemed to be quite open. And then guess what? We're still friends 30 years after. These are people that, and my team as well, right? Normally, you know, they weren't inviting each other to their weddings, you know, they were not inviting each other to their homes, but no, I did it because that's how we are. You know, we're very community. So I think I was the first and only guy who invited his whole team to his wedding. Right? And these guys, they discovered African music, they discovered African ambience, you know, and guess what? Now they're hooked, you know, and 30 years after, we're still friends, right? And most of them, that's another thing that I guess it's a privilege, but for me, it's also a necessity. Most of my very good coworker friends, I invited them over to my country. So there's 2 sets of friends that have come over to Rwanda with me on summer vacation. When I was in Japan, soon after, I invited some of my Japanese colleagues to Rwanda. They want to discover Africa, so long as they come with someone who can really expose to them their culture, etc. So don't be afraid as well to come with your background, right? And depending on how you do things, people will appreciate it, will open to you. So me, that's how I put my foot in the door, and it's really served me quite well all through my career, and we can discuss it also. And it's not just in Quebec, because it also worked I worked in Australia recently, did the same thing in Japan, China. So we should not be afraid to bring our Africanness with us, even in the job market, even in a work context.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that as well, because I mean, you present a sort of a case, you know, how we should be proud Africans and really bring in parts of our culture wherever we go, right? I just want to know, do you at times ever face pushback of maybe perhaps you're overdoing it, it's making other people feel uncomfortable. Does that experience, is there any sort of, drawback that could happen from, over expressing African identity?
Yeah, so you have to learn to read the terrain, right? You have to have, you have to develop, I don't know what the intelligence, I know there's lots of different IQs, EQs, whatever. Maybe it's a cultural cue, I don't know. But you have to be able to sense the terrain, right? I would not behave the same way at Bombardier that I would have behaved at Honda in Japan, right? So you have to be able to detect the nuances. One of my good friend, who's from Ivory Coast, he's a vice chairman at one of the top consulting companies in the US. We met once in Japan in the airport, and we were talking how there's things as Africans that we have that are very powerful enablers, okay? Especially when you're a consultant, right? We're used to navigating in complex things, family, politics, ethnic, whatever. So we've developed a keen understanding of complex environments, right? And how we navigate in those complex environments. And that can be useful for a powerful tool to help us navigate in sometimes, difficult corporate circumstances. So you have to be able to sense, okay, can I invite my friends over for barbecue, or are they going to feel obliged to come and be pissed off that I don't know. So you have to feel it, right? When I was in Japan, in the morning I would put Kofi Olomide, because we were sharing a minivan. I would put Kofi Olomide in the car. The Japanese guys were, starting work smiling, as opposed to the pictures you see when they're going to work, right? It looks like they're going to a funeral. So I would put coffee, I would put the Nigerian music. So again, it's your attitude, people, and that's the cultural side. But on the business side, when it came to how I managed them, or how I, they saw nothing but an engineer or a project manager, or So you have to be able to balance the two.
Yeah, I think that what you sort of what you're hinting at here is sort of the ability to have that cultural awareness.
Yes.
Being able to sort of just balance out those dynamics. And I'm also thinking about what you said, which is something I hadn't thought about. The idea that already Africans have this power, this superpower, if I could put it, of being able to operate in very dynamic environments. I think some of us have over 20 cousins, and when everybody's around, you have to operate around that sort of scenario.
Exactly. When a cousin or an uncle comes over and they start talking for 50 minutes, you have no clue what they want to. You have an idea, but but he wants to get to something. So that builds a certain dynamic in the way your brain, and how you listen to people, how you interact with people. And I know that, for example, when I was in Japan, my Japanese client, they could sense that I understood them much better than my European counterparts and my American counterparts, because of our culture, right? We're attuned to certain things, certain ways of behaving, and this is important that we understand those elements of our culture that are enablers, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how better to describe it, but we can discuss it afterwards.
Yeah, I think what we're realizing today is the superpower that we do have, and I think thank you for bringing in that insight. Very phenomenal. Professor Ni Adi, I do have a question again, sort of within this conversation of the professional work environment. I'm wondering if you can sort of maybe just build on what it's like being in some of these institutions as an African, as a Black person. What is your experience from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think there's some similarities, obviously, with some of what has already been shared, right? In some contexts, being the only Black person, again, I think there are some differences that I see in when you're in school versus in the workforce. And one of the things I want to bring up is I felt in school, at university, if, as Joy pointed out, when you're working, usually the focus is on the work, right? At school, there's that space, you get to know each other. And I think the kinds of school that I went to, there was that acceptance, there was the ability to actually figure things out. There was time to figure things out. At work, very often you're thrown into it, right? Again, here, my experiences in the US were different. In the US, I was more prepared. I had family there and all those things. So who had worked extensively, right? And mentors, right? So it was easy for me to navigate some of those. Coming to Canada, and again, one of the things that I see is this. I had to draw on something that actually I learned from my parents, particularly my father, who's also now late, was particularly about being assertive. I literally, in some cases here, when I came to Canada, would figure out, okay, where are the places I wanted to go, when I was looking for jobs, for example, and I'd walk in, I'd literally just walk in and ask to see, I'd of course do some research beforehand and talk about, who I wanted to see, right? My starting at McGill actually came from some of those things. Actually, the people that I met, Professor Ratna Ghosh, she's in the Faculty of Education, Professor Frank Grimard, who was at the Institute for the Study of International Development. When I came here, actually I was looking at, when I moved to Canada, I moved to Canada initially in 2008, I went back to the US. And then when I moved back again in 2010, at that time, I was looking at moving, I was either going to be moving to Vancouver, UBC, or Montreal, McGill, or U of T. I was coming as a visiting scholar because I was looking at finishing up my studies at Stanford. And I did talk to a number of people, try to go to visit all these places and decide, okay, where do I want to go, right? Coming to Montreal, I did meet some of these people, and then I think one thing led to another thing, and as I say, the rest is history. But to some degree, one of the things I realized is when I started at McGill, I feel like there's certain mistakes I made, right? And I think this is something I want to point out to people, especially when you're transitioning from school to the workforce. Sometimes you can be so focused on the work that you don't take that time to understand the culture and how a place works, right? And I think it's very important to take that time as much as you are used to sort of just focusing on work and just diving into the work. I think it's very, very important to do some of what Achille has talked about. Take that time, and get to know people, get to understand the place. At McGill, one of the things I did is I didn't do that early enough, right? And I think it's important to talk about the mistakes we've made. I was in a session, it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, where there was a very esteemed, someone who just retired from one of the UN agencies. And she talked about, let's talk about the mistakes we made. And it's very important that we talk about that. In my case, I feel like there were certain things that I should have taken more time very early on at the very beginning, as opposed to, sort of focusing on the work part, to connect with people. I've done some of that later on. It's been extremely helpful. There are people like Professor, as I mentioned, Professor Ghosh, Professor Frank Grimard, Professor Khalid Medani, Professor Adel Blaquette. The people that I've also gotten to connect with. Obviously, Professor Obalijoro as well, Eliane. There are multiple people that I've gotten to connect with, and it's been extremely helpful, right? I wish I'd done that at the very beginning, because I think there's certain mistakes that I've made at McGill that I wouldn't have made, right? There's a politics, there are things that you need to understand to navigate well, right? And I think that's also where it's important to be able to talk to people, even if they are not with your institution, right? Finding people who understand the sector. If I'm someone who I wasn't necessarily looking to go into academia initially, but talking to people who are within the field. I think it's also important to talk to even your family members, because sometimes we don't think about the family members who might have experiences that might be helpful to us. We just think about them as family, as opposed to taking professional advice from them. And I think it's important to draw on that as well.
Right. I think I'm going to try and sort of like shift the conversation right now, because we've been talking a bit about our challenges. And I think that's very important, as you mentioned, Professor Nee, to really talk about some of the challenges that we may experience. And you've also just highlighted something which you said has been something that you wish you had done. And I know that this is an idea that you've been really developing here at McGill for African students, which are African students here at McGill. who are mostly in the chat today, is the idea of intergenerational knowledge and intergenerational knowledge transfer and mentorship. Just as a general idea, can you please maybe just build on that idea, and what does it really mean about intergenerational knowledge transfer? Yeah, I think if you could just lead us on that.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, most of my work on intergenerational learning was actually really inspired by the kind of relationships that I've had, mostly familial, actually. I've been very fortunate. I've been very privileged, that I come, my parents, my extended family, they're the type that, you choose a path, they allow you to choose your own path, and you have that independence and you follow it. There's always a joke about, President, you have to be a doctor, you have to do this, you have to do that. I was fortunate, very privileged that my family, it wasn't like that. You choose a path, right? So I started off in the sciences, and in Ghana, there was the track. But over time, one of the things that I realized was key to talk to people who had done certain things before you. So I've talked about, family members talking about race, learning from them. There were lots of details that sometimes just in chatting with them, I learned. I was surprised when I found out one of my uncles, I'd known him for God knows how long, but I never knew he was involved in the civil rights movement. Professor Gigenyo, Victor Gigenyo, and others, my Nani, well, I've also mentioned, right? I mean, for some of them, I knew some of what they were working on, so we used to talk quite a bit about it. But I realized that when I started focusing more on chatting with them about professional, sort of my professional direction, it was amazing the details I learned, and you start to realize some of what you're experiencing, they have experienced it before, right? So how do you not repeat the same mistakes? Right, so that's been some of the inspiration for these intergenerational programming, right? I feel like that there are some people who may not necessarily have access to some of this, but it's something that should be inbuilt, in our programming, in our curricula, things like that. And that's where, as Mona, you're aware, we have this intergenerational programming at the School for Continuing Studies, is the McGill Committee for Lifelong Learning, because you have people who have a wealth of knowledge and that are really looking to share. Right, some of these issues that we face, they've been faced before in different ways, and I think that's where this idea of intergenerational learning comes in. There's the academic side, but much more also on the personal side. What are some of the issues that you need to be thinking about? You want to raise a family, what should you be thinking about as you're doing some of those things, right?
Yeah, and I think that's I'm gonna try and sort of keep this conversation going on sort of the idea of mentorship, because Joy, again, as we mentioned, you're an engineer in the STEM field. Perhaps there aren't a lot of people that have done what you've done, and I know you've worked with NSBE and all that. Can you please maybe talk about how mentorship plays a role? And I know you're part of a committee as well on diversity and inclusion for STEM. Do you guys sort of, think about the ideas of mentorship for upcoming people in STEM?
Yeah, I would say mentorship is very important. Like, I know I'm at the beginning of my career and I'm still learning to actually tap into like the wealth of knowledge of people around me. I'm not there yet in terms of like seeking mentors per se, but I know that I know to like look into like check what we have on LinkedIn, like who do I aspire to be like, what are they doing, and how can I like contact them. So sometimes I would like set up coffee meetings, for example, with someone, say, hey, I like what you're doing here, like can I get to know more about it, right? Now at OSP, a lot of what we try to do is to push for inclusivity and diversity in the engineering field. And yes, we do care about mentorship and also try to promote people of minority into leadership positions. So we have programs, like a program coming up in the next couple of weeks, that's just trying to help people within the workforce understand, okay, how can you promote diversity within your workplace, and also able to also help people understand why they should push for diversity in their own workplace. So if you're someone who is a member of minority, what can you do as a member of minority to help not really help, but like help the people within your workplace understand why, like, and value diversity, and also be more open to listen to your ideas and sharing your ideas in that space. Now, as part of NSBE, I think one of the things you also pushed for was also trying to connect our students or McGill students to the industry. So trying to reach out to industry, maybe it can be a HR person or industry rep or company rep, to see like to kind of like expose them to our to the students that are part of NASB. I think I don't know if Aura is here, so she's current president of NASB, and at the time when I met her, she didn't really quite understand what was going on with NASB. You know, she was new, and I was like, hey, this is why she joined NASB. You know, so trying to also encourage people within the McGill community to understand like why is she part of this community, and to see the value that we bring to the students. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely hits at some of the things that we're discussing is really like, you know, I think just the fact that NSB is there and people can go there to sort of find community and potentially relationships up the ranks. So I think that's you sort of reached at that. Aishila, I'm going to come to you on this because I know in your work you deal with the best practices. And I know it's best practices sort of, you know, within maybe the technical aspects of best practices, right? But my idea is mentorship really is about, you know, passing on best practices to young and upcoming people. Can you please sort of bring together best practices and mentorship? I'm not sure if that's a good question. Yeah.
No, it's actually a very good question. It has to start with yourself, right? So meaning that you yourself need to go and seek out a mentor. And that's the first thing I did, right? So I've always, when I started my career, I had mentors. When I was at Bombardier, one of my mentors was Rondon, he wasn't in my field. He was a SAP developer, but I had a lot of respect for him. You know, I liked the way he carried himself. I liked the way he managed not only his personal life, but also his business, his professional life. And the two are not necessarily, disconnected. So, and he's always been a mentor to me. And then once I was really in the professional career, I actually seeked out a coach within the company. And she was a professional coach. And so we did sessions together. She gave me things to read. That's where I defined my vision, my mission. You know, what am I? So it was really very, very well structured, and it actually served me quite well because after that I also took on mentees. So I think I've had more than 20 mentees in my career. And pre-COVID, I believe I was lunching or having lunch with someone either that I knew or that someone who was referred to me at least once every week, right? So we're Africans, right? So it's an oral tradition. So it's all about sharing and talking. I don't know if we're good readers, but we're good talkers. And we're good eaters. So I combine the two. So on a regular basis, and I still have I have a weekly call with a young man I'm mentoring, another lady every 2 or 3 weeks, others ad hoc. One of my mentees, as a how can I put it, as a thank you to what I've been doing with him, he's taken on my wife's niece who wants to go into engineering. He's an engineer. So he's also now coaching her on a weekly basis. So that's how we can multiply the power of the knowledge or capitalize on our collective knowledge, because it's huge. When we started, or at least when I arrived 30 years ago, we're not that many. I remember walking downtown Montreal and looking at the skyscrapers and dreaming, wow, I hope one day I'll be able to work in those offices. Now it's no longer a dream. For me, it's normal, it's reality. So now we have, the young students that are finishing, you really have a wealth of knowledge that's out there. You need to be assertive. You should, take that. Don't fear to call someone on LinkedIn. I actually had the audacity once to send an email to Lucien Bouchard. Those of you that know Quebec politics, I'm not a separatist, but I liked his leadership style. And then I sent him an email, would you be okay to coach me? I think the secretary responded, she blew me off, but not necessarily in a bad way, but at least I tried, Same thing in terms of if you identify someone that you think could be a good coach or could provide good advice for your career, don't hesitate. You have nothing to lose, right? The thing I would tell myself 20, 30 years ago is to not fear. You have nothing to lose. So connect with peers, connect with friends, family. I think Dr. Adi talked about it. Family, on every 2 weeks, I have conference call with my family members. We talked about my sister Eliane. She's great advice. I have brothers and other brothers also that are in different fields, but give me a different dimension of work life. So yes, family are powerful mentors, friends are powerful mentors, but seek them out. And do it in a structured way if it's possible. Then take a coach. I actually organized recently a webinar with 4 coaches that were professional coaches for the Rwandan Professionals Network in Canada, where we wanted to expose to our members, the role of a coach. What does a coach do? And it wasn't just executive coaches. One coach was actually specialized in dating, right? Dating coach, and he was specialized in Black women dating. Another one was physical, performance, so sound, mind, and body. So you need to look at all these things and try to do things in a structured way. I think it's important. Process is important. Don't go to someone you feel like. If after a couple of meetings you see there's no value, you have to have the courage to say, look, I think we'll stop it here, and move on. So that's what I recommend.
Yeah, and I think what I'm gaining here as well is shoot your shot. So everybody that's in this conversation, shoot your shot, including to the panelists. And so I think there's what we're gonna try and do here is I just want you guys to sort of think about questions that you might want to ask each other, just like ask one other person. That's what we're gonna try and do in a bit. But before we get there, Professor Lee, I wanted to know, what do you hope to see from African students at McGill? What is something that African students at McGill should be doing?
I think yesterday was I was on the session, and one of the things I tell people is it's amazing what we have in terms of African students at McGill. The students here inspire me, and I say that that's the truth of it, right? It's amazing what people do, and I think just in terms of your engagement, right? In terms of moving forward, I think the point has been brought up. Sheil talked about complexity, and this is true not just of African students at McGill, but I think African students elsewhere. That ability to thrive, when you have contexts where things are volatile, they're uncertain, they're complex, they're ambiguous. That's something that African students have, right? So moving forward, let's really own that, and let's leverage that. The kind of world we're living in now, it's key, it's important, right? And so recognize that all the complexities. I think as the idea of the conversations with all the mini cousins and dealing with all of that, it's key. So I think moving forward, recognize that and own it, as you're moving forward. Also in the professional world, there are a few things that I just also put out there for all students, not just the McGill African students. History. Take that time to learn history, and when I say history, I mean history prior to slavery and colonization. African peoples have had long histories way before. Anybody who's taken my classes knows this, that I say, well, what do you know about Mansa Musa, right? What do you know about the Asantwa? So it's important to recognize that there are long histories. Let's not just start, just recent history. Let's go beyond. So take that time, and whatever your field is in, learn some history. And that's also the history of our families, of people we admire. The nitty-gritty, the stories, what I call the stories behind the story, right? So understanding some of what has actually happened, what are the experiences. The other thing is also something that has been brought up already. Take risks, right? if it wasn't, I don't know if one of the things I learned again from Professor Anani, was this, something like the West African Students Union, WASU. These were people who were students just like you. All the pressures, all the stresses, all of that. But they took risks, and if it wasn't for the people, for the risk that they took, the independence movements we had wouldn't have happened. You think about it, was a long-term process, very hard work that went on. So we are at a moment. This is a critical moment. All that's been going on, Black Lives Matter, all of that, it's critical. It's a period, a very specific period. So I say, students now, what's happening is going to change. This is an opportunity. You need to seize it. If we don't seize it, we're going to rue this. Right? So take risks that, take calculated risks, right? And also build alliances. Kwame Nkrumah talks about African union, African unity. It's not just the political leaders, it's the student groups, right? What are the alliances that you have amongst, the students themselves, right? But beyond that also, what are the alliances outside of even African groups, right? Africans and non-Africans, ultimately, that's what is needed. So what are the alliances that are being built? So what I would say is, yes, learn the history, take those risks, and build those alliances, connect and build those alliances to have the kind of impact that is needed. This period that we're living in, it's a short period, actually. That's what I believe, right? But it's a period that very opportune, and I think we should take steps that actually enable the kind of impact that we want to see.
Right, and I think the point that really resonates with me right now is the idea of learning history and learning about how powerful our people were. Some of the things that I've been learning really recently was, for instance, like Timbuktu, which is the oasis of knowledge, one of the oldest universities, oldest institutions of higher learning in the world. And so that's sort of like an empowering thing to us young Africans, that maybe sometimes may, ascribe knowledge to almost like the Western circles and completely negate the fact that, back at home on the continent, there is a lot of knowledge generation occurring right now. And we need to have a deeper understanding of that. And I even think as well about, the Great Zimbabwe, one of the crazy architectural feats. And even when you read that history, I think another point to be made as well about reading accurate history as well, because that history of a great architectural feat of Great Zimbabwe is said was built by other people than non-natives. So I think there's also something to be made about reading accurate history and also just knowledge generation that needs to continue to happen on the continent. And then on the last point you were talking about was sort of right now is a moment. I think all Africans since 2020, or Black people since 2020, recognize that right now is a moment. How do we go about, working within these institutions that are rigid, and how do we, get the gains that we're supposed to get right now? I'll start with you again, Professor Nee, and then I'll move the conversation on.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to reiterate some of what I just said, right? In terms of learning, understanding, the West African, Students Union. How did they do it? What happened? So how do we strategize? Given this moment, how do we actually learn from what had happened before? There's some of the people who are still alive, actually, and so how can you actually draw from some of the experiences that you might not find written in books, right? So your research project, how do you use that to actually learn to develop strategies, right? At the same time, I think just given that the timing, it speaks to this issue of just taking risks, doing it. In some cases, yes, you have to act now, right? Because you don't want to be paralyzed by analysis, right? In some cases, you just have to act. But it's that preparation beforehand, understanding the histories that can also inform what you're looking at doing now, right? And then again, the alliances. Who are the key people that one needs to ally with? How can you get over sort of sometimes the personal issues that people face, but also their strategic ideas? Some people have an approach that some might consider being pacifist, being a pacifist versus sort of being a rebel. How do you get over that? How do you look at the bigger goal, right? And I think that's a key thing that African students everywhere need to do that now.
Right. Thank you for that. Very powerful. Joy, I'm going to come to you in terms of this idea of strategy. We should be strategizing to really get the gains of this moment where there seems to be an opening and there is the possibility that we could change things right now. How do we strategize?
I think the first step is just understanding that your difference is probably your superpower and being able to tap into that. So like if you're able to understand that, okay, me as Joy, yes, I am Black, yes, I am Nigerian, yes, I'm a woman. How can I leverage this, what sets me aside into paving, like making a way for myself, like making a path for myself, whether it's professionally or otherwise. I think that's probably my answer to that question. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much for that. And Ashila, I'm gonna move on as well with that question. How do we deal with these rigid institutions? I know you've been a part of lots of different institutions as well. So how do we effect change within these big institutions?
For me, it's not I was going to say it's not complicated. It's complex, but how do you take that complexity, and then and then execute? So number one, we have to take a seat out. We have to take our seat at the table. No one is going to give it to us, right? There's a whole movement of trying to get people from Africans, Blacks, minorities in the boards of these companies, right? I think you've all heard about the Black North Initiative. So, that's important. When you look at, I'm not an economist, and I like the point that the professor made about if I'm an engineer, take interest in history, take interest in sociology. You have to be knowledgeable about different dimensions. So in that case, for example, communities that are well off or wealthy, there's different dimensions that drive that. It's the level of interaction within the community, right? The confidence within those communities between each other. There's a high correlation of how the trust within a specific group, the level of trust, the level of interaction, and the wealth, or whatever you want to call that, that group achieves in a country. So we need to also work on all those dynamics. Me personally, for example, I'm on the board of, for example, PMI, Project Management Institute in Montreal, which is the largest Francophone project management chapter, 5,000 members, right? And what did we do this year? First year member, and we've presented an initiative for Black History Month, where we have different members from the Black community being presented and discussing in a video what's the benefit of having diversity in project teams, right? So there's all these, actions. There's been a lot of think tanks, and actually I'm working also with a group of friends we met during the COVID crisis across the whole continent and here. We called it United Action for Africa, because we're tired of think tanks. We want to act. I'm a project manager, I execute. Give me a plan, I'm going to execute it, right? And this is how we should be acting, right? I invested in a small coffee washing station with my wife in Burundi. We just got 30, I don't know how they call them, bushels arrive in Montreal. First day they were all sold. So, we need to do these small things. We need to act. We need to stop talking. We need to act. I don't know how else to say it. We need to get moving. We need to, go get that vote seat, go get elected, go into the Liberal Party if you're tired of their politics. Yeah. Do something.
That's I think those 2 points kind of blend in between Professor Lee saying, that sometimes we can get caught up in the paralysis by analysis, right?
Yeah.
So, you also mentioned that we should now move the conversation forward in terms of like how do we start strategically engaging issues that we seem to be very valuable. So
and if I may, one point vis-a-vis what happened in 2020 with the Black Lives Matter movement, I think one thing that it did is it triggered a lot of passive people, and that were on the sidelines and wanted to stay under the radar because they wanted to fit in, they wanted to, right? But all of a sudden they said, even me, I'm an engineer, I'm a lawyer, and I still get no respect when I go to a hotel, or when I go to this, or when I go to that. So you get no benefit from being passive. right? So you need to take risks, and this is what it triggered. It became really a powerful enabler in terms of having a lot of passive people say, no, enough is enough. Now we need to act. And that, I think that if there's a legacy of George Floyd, it's going to be having awoken the sleeping African giants that we are, to move and to act, and take our place in today's Western societies.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I'm just going to sort of reset the room right now in case anybody has entered. So right now we're having a conversation with our illustrious panelists who are sort of discussing some of the ways that they've had challenges and both been able to navigate and giving us advice as well as students. I'm going to get to my last question now, which I'm going to pose to both Joy and Achille, because I think Professor Nia has already reached at it. And then we'll get into the last part, which is you guys get to ask each other questions, just one question per person, please. So just really quick shot, Joy, quick advice for students here at McGill who may be trying to figure it out. What do you have to tell us?
First of all, I feel like if you are at McGill, you're already doing something good. And if you're able to finish from McGill, you can do anything. I think this is a very important thing. Like some of us feel like if I go to a particular, if I study a particular course, that's all I have to do for the rest of my life. But just know, be open to different opportunities, different experiences that are not in line with what your plan was or what you thought you wanted to do in life. Network, absolutely important. Network with people within your community as well as outside your community. Reach out to people, talk to people, ask questions. Don't be afraid to own your space and expand that space. Don't feel like, so I'll give, for me, for example, I think when I started working, one of the things I had that crippled me was imposter syndrome. I was in a room full of a lot of old white men who had opinions about everything, and I just felt like I couldn't say anything, right? So I'll be in a corner and they're talking about a particular problem, and I have an idea of like how we can go about it. But I'm like, is it right? Is it wrong? Should I speak? Or will I be foolish? And someone right next to me would say the exact same thing I was thinking, the exact same thing. And I'm like, oh, I could have said that. Like, what stopped me? So don't be afraid to be in a room and speak up. Speak up what you think. Don't even if it sounds stupid in your head, don't be afraid to make your opinions known. Otherwise, no. And I guess being in North America now, you have to be the one to really take up that space and be the one to like say, hey, look, I'm doing this. Like let people know what you're doing. Let people see what your worth is. They're not going to, no one's going to come to you and say, okay, let me just evaluate Joy now. Her worth is X, Y, and Z. She's this, she's that. You have to be the one to tell them, this is what I bring to the table. And yeah, just own your uniqueness. It's actually amazing being African. Like, you don't understand, people want to be us. There's so much we bring, there's so much that's so unique about us, so lovely about us. People just want, it's like right now, we have a bi-weekly engineering meeting in my company. So last week, I was playing music, like I was playing an Afrobeat music on my phone. And when the meeting started, and they go, oh, Joy, what's that music? It's nice. And I'm like, it's X, Y, and Z. And they said, okay, you can become a professional DJ for our meetings. I was like, fantastic, sure. So every time now when we have meetings, I'll play our intro of African music, outro of African music. They'll ask who is it, I'll send the links, just be open to bring your full self try to bring your full self to work, own that. I think Achille talked about it, right? Sharing his culture, sharing his food, invite people to his house. Try to also bring yourself there. Like if you're having issues with like things going on back in your country, maybe like a political situation, like we had the EndSARS in Nigeria. I told my manager, hey, I'm not okay. This is happening in my country. Share such experiences with them, because that's the only way they also get to understand you as well.
Thank you for that. So we're learning to command the space. Achille, really quickly, tell us just quick words of advice to young students about to enter into the professional world.
I think we've said almost everything, right? but I mean, important thing is really have no fear. Don't underestimate your potential. Have a plan. When I started my career, every time I tell this to people, they say, well, no, it's not possible. Yeah, but I had a plan, 1, 2, 5, 10-year plan. Why not? Even if you don't follow it, at least you have a target, and then you'll be missing, and then you can course correct. Have allies, right? Don't really just go for it. And also one important thing, I think, is especially being members of the African diaspora. Africa is booming. Yes, we have challenges, but there's a lot of potential as well in Africa. My mentee, he's going back to start an agribusiness back home, right? Don't neglect the potential also on the continent, whether you go there or whether it's in terms of promoting it to your coworkers. You never know. You might have an investment done by your company, and then they put you as the head of that division, right? Why not? So why should the Americans, the Europeans, and the Chinese be making money in Africa and we're not? And we're the bridge between the two. So also have that in your plans potentially. We're too old now. Well, I'm too old, but I'm still investing, and I'm still looking to do something back home on the continent. If it's not your country, choose another one. Doesn't matter, but keep Africa as well in your thoughts.
Right. Big take from that strategy and executing strategy too. So now this is the kind of dynamic aspect of it. Professor Nee, if you could ask anybody a question on this panel, what would the question be?
So I'm thinking, by myself, a couple of decades ago, something like this. The question I would like to ask, I think, for both Joy and Achille is, what advice would you give as one is looking for a job, right, in the current context, right? Maybe from your own experiences.
Joy, you want to take that one?
I'm sure. Looking for a job. Tap into your network. So like the McGill Alumni Association is a very broad, has a broad network on, you can check LinkedIn. Just look for, if you want a particular field, for example, and you just search up a company and you find somebody who works at McGill, who works there that's from McGill, just message them, hey, I see that you work in X, Y, and Z. I too went to McGill. Just make that connection. Don't be afraid to ask people for help. If you don't ask people for help, they won't be able to help you. They won't know you don't even need help. And just one more thing, a lot of companies actually have referral programs.
Yes.
So people get paid when they refer you and you get the job and you stay there for maybe 3 or 6 months, whatever the probation period is. So that means they actually gain. They start to gain if you reach out to them, and they're the ones who send in a referral for you. So just know that they're doing you a favor, but they're also going to gain from you. So they have an incentive to want to help you. So reach out and ask people for help.
And if I may, actually, LinkedIn is actually a very powerful tool. And I've had my own consulting company since 2008. All my contracts were either through LinkedIn or via people that I kept in touch with via LinkedIn. So yes, if you're going to use tools like LinkedIn, make sure your profile is clean and professional, is up to date, right? Look at other profiles that you think are really nice looking, and then replicate whatever they have. Don't contact someone on LinkedIn and you just have a one-liner on your LinkedIn profile. They'll say, what is this person? Or right? Try to connect, not necessarily HR people. Connect with, if you're an engineer, connect with the engineering manager for a specific company. I think the professor was talking about you used to do cold calls and walk into offices and present yourself. I also did that, right? So today's version of that is virtually walking into the office. So you need to do that. You need to work your family network, work even your neighbors. When you're talking to a neighbor, I realized after 30 years in Montreal, there's people that I didn't know. I knew them physically, but I didn't know them because we never talked about professional or deep things, right? Open up to your neighbor. You never know. you never know what that neighbor could be or could know or could. It's all about, you know, the famous 6 degrees of whatever. So it's really about communication. And I'm in project management. 90% of project success is communication, right? You need to talk, let yourself known. In my country, people are very shy, you know, about putting things out there in the public, and that's really not serving us well. So we do also sessions about teaching our members about exposing yourself, being, you know how the Americans are loud. You know, on top of that, we're Africans, so we're, you know, we're calm and collected, and we're Canadians, so we're even worse. So you, you're not about boasting.
Thank you.
So that's
Yeah.
what we need to do.
Thank you so
That's
much.
what they need to do.
Right, right. Thank you for the job seeker question and the answers following that. Joy, really quickly, if you could ask anyone a quick question, what would it be?
Sorry. Okay. So my question is about mentorship. So as I mentioned, I am still trying to navigate that area. So I would like to know for either of you, what would you say is the best approach to reach out to somebody for, like, to ask them to mentor you? Like, what do you need to create a connection? Like, how would you advise young Africans to go about that?
Having done it, you know, it's first of all, you need to know yourself, right? You need to know what you're looking for in a mentoring relationship. That's the first point, because you know you might want a mentor to guide you in terms of your leadership skills, or it's rarely technical aspects of the work, right? It's really more about the full person. So you really need to know what kind of mentorship or you're looking for, and then once you've identified that, you know, ask around. You know, my mentors are friends in my network. They're not necessarily people in my company. They've been people in different areas, not necessarily in engineering. You know, they've been in other areas as well. Choose diversity as well. You know, different ways of thinking, because I have more than one mentor, right? So it's really about knowing yourself first, and then, you know, try to choose someone who can address the needs that you're really looking to address.
Thank you for that. And then Professor Nee, just really quickly on that question.
So I think, you know, I'd suggest some of you might already know this, that the McGill Black Alumni Association has a mentoring program that they've launched, right? Also, as part of the McGill's, we have the MasterCard Foundation Transitions Project. We've launched the McGill Alumni Africa Network, and part of what we're building with that is a mentorship aspect as well, particularly for people who are looking to engage with mentors working on and in Africa.
Thank you for that resource. And then Ashili, just one person you could ask just a quick question, and then we'll move on to the Q&A.
Yeah, I mean, being an engineer, so my question would be to Joy, and especially being a Black woman engineer, because even just women engineer, there weren't a lot when I started, and you know, there's still not that many depending on the field. How do you see your career going forward, and where do you see yourself in 5 years, and how do you intend to get there? It's a bit personal, but I guess given your profile as a Black engineer, I think it's interesting for some of the younger engineers, especially female engineers that are coming along. You know, what's your plan basically? And how can we help you, by the way, also to reach your goals as well?
Thank you for that question. So I'll say I'm still trying to navigate the industry. I'm particularly interested in energy, so sustainable energy to be precise. So I've been looking into like how, and not just about how can we use that to solve issues on the continent. And one thing I've found for myself right now is, okay, if I want to work on the continent, most people require you to have a master's. I currently have a BEng. So I've been looking at, okay, how can I try to get that degree to afford me the opportunity to go back home to different organizations to actually partake in that in that industry. So how can I basically upskill more or less, gain more experience, upskill, gain more experience, and then try to take that back to the continent and work there. That's like my future plan. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, see, it's good to talk about your plans. Now the whole planet knows your plans, and someone will want to help you to achieve your plan. No, but it's true. Someone will definitely, someone who's listening and that sees potential will say, okay, I think I'm going to call Joy and connect her with this person. That's at least in my case, that's how things happen the most of the time.
Yeah, and thank you so much for that. I think that was a very interesting sort of, back and forth between the panelists. I think oftentimes, people want to know more about each other, but they never get the opportunity to. Thank you to the Mass Committee. Actually, they thought about this idea, which is super innovative. So we do have a question from the floor. We have Joy Sabera. Maybe she might want to mute and ask the question herself. If not, I will just ask it. All right. So I guess we have a question from Joy Sabera, and the question is: we've talked a lot about what it feels like to be an African outside of Africa, and in Canada specifically. But could any of you speak to what it's like living in another African country other than your own, and what sort of struggles and opportunities that may be associated with that? I guess we'll start with Professor Nee.
I think for me, so I've spent some time in other African countries, South Africa, Madagascar, visited Guinea, a few other African countries. I think in terms of work, one of the things that's always striking is sometimes people mistake you for a local. Yeah, and sometimes what has happened is somebody speaks a local language and you can't respond, and like, how come you can't respond, right? It's a trivial thing, but I actually love it, because it makes you feel like you belong, right? But I feel like there is this certain difference. I mean, there's a lot of learning that one gets when one is working in an African country, because you see the diversity of Africa at play. But I think one of the things I found out is it feels very much like home. Wherever I go in Africa, I find some of those commonalities, and it's amazing, something that I really enjoy.
All right, thank you for that. Ashila, I'm not sure if you've lived in any other place on the continent beyond Rwanda, and maybe you might comment on that.
Unfortunately, very young, I lived in Uganda, but I was too young to be able to say anything meaningful to Joy, who by her name, I suspect she's either from Rwanda or Burundi. So hello, Joy. No, unfortunately, I only worked outside of Africa, so unfortunately I wouldn't be able to answer Joy's question.
Right. Yeah, no, that's fine. And Joy, maybe you might have. I know you're early in your career, but if you've worked on the continent or not, that's fine. I can maybe move on to the next question.
Yeah, no, I haven't worked on the continent, but I did live in Kenya for 5 years, and like as Nee mentioned, it's like you feel like you're at home. The food is somewhat similar without spice, pepper to be precise, but you can relate to people back there. Yeah.
What you just said about Kenya, that resonates with me so much. I was in Kenya actually from August till November last year, and I am in love with Kenya, to say the least. And we'll be going back. That's where I hope to end up. And then we have another question from Ore Olua, and she's asking, so talking about history, do you have any recommendations about platforms or materials that give descriptions on pre-colonial African stories? So what sort of resources or books, specific things that you might have? I guess we'll start maybe Achille and then Professor Nee.
My reference, I believe, I guess most of you know Cheikh Anta Diop, Senegalese philosopher and historian. So that I believe would be a good start. But I think most of our countries have scholars that are specialized in their respective countries. So depending on the country that you're interested in, definitely you could find some material there to expand your knowledge of our history and of the continent. But for me, Cheikh Anta Diop is a very good reference.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I think maybe just like my one only addition to that is really just reading about local people that are writing in local context, because sometimes we try and take historians from elsewhere that are writing about us from their own perspective, and perhaps are not even there to speak about, the history. So also just in that search, looking at local scholars is fantastic. Professor Nee, any resources on pre-colonial history?
So actually, that's I see that as a place that is ripe for a lot of work by young people, right? It's been difficult for me to find. Sometimes I have to look up things. Recently, I saw there was a UNESCO website that actually had a listing of women leaders, across time. So UNESCO, I mean, there was something that out there, but I think for the most part, one has to look. But I find that actually that's a place where there's a lot of opportunity coming up with things like just writing some of these histories. Some of them are hidden in research that people have done and just sitting somewhere, and they need people like yourselves doing research to actually bring this in. So I think something like the journals that African students are writing here, the journals that you produce, these are spaces where you can actually create platforms for some of this older history, because there is a lot of opportunity there. We don't have enough knowledge about that.
Right. And I think that's something maybe the ASSA could, really look at, maybe creating some sort of reading list for students to look at pre-colonial history. Maybe Joy, you might have a comment, or?
No, I don't, but I look forward to exploring the ones that have been suggested to us today.
Right, thank you so much for that. So we're about to wrap up now. And so I just want to say thank you to all our panelists. You guys have brought in lots of different insight, introspection, personally, about looking at literally our histories and how we can sort of understand that and how that can empower us, and looking at, how we need to execute strategy. I think that's a very key one. And then from mentorship as well, from intergenerational learning, those are some very, very key components for students here still at McGill. So that's for me. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the conversation with you, and I'll now hand it back to the MAS team. And I believe Alice will carry it from here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for great insight, and we feel very proud and empowered. But before you leave, what I would think maybe is a panel table, I wanted to ask our panelists a little bit of one last question. I know we mentioned a lot about being proud and being able to share our knowledge in the spaces where we're entering. And I also know that MAS's motto is proudly African. So I just wanted to ask you, Achille and Nee and Joy, if you can say, if you do speak your language or any other African language, how you say, I am African and I am proud. I think I'll start with Nee. You were first on my screen.
Okay. I'll say it in Fanti, which is one of the languages I speak. With Africa,
Great to receive that. Achille?
Donc, ngendo munyarwanda, donc kuba umunyafrika biduha agaciro.
Ooh, that was deep. Thank you, Achille. Joy?
Rakoze.
This is very embarrassing, but Abam Onye Africa. I don't know how to say proud in my language, but I can say I'm African.
Oh, yes, that's great. Thank you. It was great to hear such diversity in language and richness. All right, so before we wrap up, I just wanted to invite a special person for us here at McGill, and it is Antoine. Antoine, I see you getting ready. Antoine is joining us as the inaugural appointee to the role of Black Student Affairs Liaison, a position created pursuant to the university's action plan to address anti-Black racism here at McGill. In this role, Antoine Samuel, he has a very long name, very, very rich name, is responsible for connecting with and supporting Black students across McGill at both the graduate and undergraduate levels to ensure that their needs and interests are communicated effectively to the university and addressed in a timely manner. I believe you all have seen the plan. Everybody was excited to see it. So Antoine is going to be our liaison person between the university and us. So as Black students and also as African students. So Antoine happens to be of Senegal, Benin, and Algeria nationality. And he completed his honors BA at McGill in 2007 and a master's degree in international studies at the University of Montreal. And just prior to joining our team, he has worked as a liaison officer at Field Studies Officer with McGill Faculty of Arts and Faculty of Science. I do believe he worked in the internships office as well. He's the one who helps us apply for internships and funding, used to, before he moves it into the Israel. So Antoine, we would like to have you talk to us, please.
Speak to all the, is this good now? Okay. Thank you, Alice, for this great presentation, Mass for organizing everything, this 2-day conference, and to all the panelists, thank you for speaking, and I'll be connecting with you shortly. I got from this discussion, we have to act and we have to strategize, and Mune, thanks for hosting and getting so much great information out. As you mentioned, I was working at McGill for a long time, and I think one of the things I was doing was already working with Black students, African students, just because of who I am. Now I have the opportunity to have this full-time. My task list is very large, but it's all exciting opportunities. And I just wanted to talk about what this discussion today inspired in me. It's an anecdote. Early in the discussion, you mentioned one of the challenges was a support network when you arrive in Canada. And I remember a student from Lomé, Togo, who came and they didn't know anyone, and my dad kind of brought them in. We would have Chibujen and Yasa every week with Comme l'homme ici. And he went on to study at Polytechnique and then founded the African Entrepreneur and Professional Network known as REPAF now 15 years ago. And so I was inspired by this mentorship leading to action and a big network, and it's what I'm trying to bring now in my role as the Black Student Affairs Liaison. So as described, my role is really for a place for students to land. Black and African students, they can come to me with pernicious issues such as, curriculum, classroom discussion. When there's issues that are brought forth in a matter that's not correct, and you don't know who to talk about these subtle microaggressions, you can definitely come and speak to me. And I've had a lot of feedback in meetings with various student groups, and there's a definite lack of visibility and representation on campus. So definitely my role, I'm here for the hard times and challenges, but I also want to highlight the opportunities. I'm looking to link students with local Black organizations and really connect with the local African community here in Montreal. And I'm working already with a lot of great projects with MASS, with NESB, organizations that we've mentioned. But a lot of times people mentioned in this discussion, they don't know where to turn to. I just want to make it clear, and that's my brief collaboration to today's discussion is you can come and see me. I want to be made know that I'm available. I have open office hours. You can email me at any time if there's a complaint or issue, but if you're looking for an opportunity to discuss internships, professional advancement, mentoring, I'm working with the McGill Black Alumni Association. I have my own personal network I can share, and we have access to a lot of resources and funding. So we are in a special time right now. The attention is on us magically for now, but I'm seeing money come down, opportunities, and I'm running with it, and I want you all to join me. So just know that you can come and see me. We're already developing a space on campus for Black students where my office will be located once we're done with this COVID pandemic. But in the meantime, digitally, I'm really available. It's a blessing to have been able to share my experience today and to listen to everyone. And I just want you all to know that you can reach out to me anytime. So I'll leave my email in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Antoine. I just want to mention personally that Antoine is very, very approachable and very helpful. But before you leave, Antoine, may I also ask you how you say I am African and proud, if you do happen to speak any African language? Oh, you're still muted.
I'm still taking classes for Wolof, but I would say in French, because I think a lot of times people don't know. You could come and speak to me. Je suis africain et très fier de l'être.
Awesome. Yay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But before I invite MAS President Aisha to say closing remarks, I just wanted to say that we are so happy that we were able to have this conference within the pandemic obligations to be on the screen for this long. We're very grateful that you were able to stay on here and engage with us. Achille, Ni, and Joy, thank you so much for the wealth of knowledge that you have imparted with us today. And everyone else who was able to stay on the call or pop in or who's live on Facebook, we see you and we appreciate you. So Aisha, our president, you have the floor.
Thank you, Elise, and thank you all so much, the audience, for joining us at this year's Africa Speaks conference. We hope that this weekend's discussions were interesting and that they were able to inspire you to continue to be proud Africans and members of the diaspora and continue to engage in dialogue surrounding the continent. So I would like to give a big thank you to Umurage, a Rwandan dance group, who shared their beautiful performance with us earlier this afternoon. And they gave us a taste of what celebrations back home look and feel like while we're all abroad. I'd also like to thank our keynote speaker today, the radiant Ms. Aïssata Sako, who so graciously traded what would have been a weekend spent on the ski slopes to be here with us today. Ms. Sako shared her story of coming to Canada and Quebec with us while inspiring us to continue to find the best versions of ourselves and reminding us to always be true and kind to ourselves. I would also like to thank Dr. Ni, Joy, and Achille, and our moderator Mune, who joined us on today's panel and gave us a lot of valuable insight regarding the importance of mentorship, maintaining your Africanness even in professional settings, and using it to your advantage. We were able to have a great panel discussion yesterday evening as well, where so much knowledge and gems were dropped regarding navigating these predominantly white spaces as Africans and members of the diaspora. Thank you to yesterday's panelists, Dorcas Nakachwa, Kariuki Kiriga, Abdel Diko, and our moderator, Ianu Soyej, who gave us such a memorable and insightful panel. Thank you also to Antoine, who just spoke and who has taken the time to be here with us today and inform us about what his role is, and we hope that you will all be able to connect with him. There is so much that goes into planning an event like this. And while we hope you were all able to enjoy this year's conference, how it came to fruition, we would also like to extend a big thank you to everyone who has contributed to the organization of this event, as well as our distinguished guests. Thank you to the Black Students Network and the Black Students Network at McGill and Professor Medani in the African Studies Department for their contribution. Without them, this event would not have been possible. Thank you also to Dr. Ni, who not only contributed to our panel today, but who has also provided MAS with endless support in the planning of this event. In addition to contributing to the event outline and content, Dr. Ni also connected us with the MasterCard Foundation and so many wonderful people that have been able to contribute so meaningfully to our conference. Thank you to Laura, who so eloquently acknowledged the land earlier this afternoon and shared the importance of recognizing and honoring Indigenous communities. Our VP Media, Kamsi, and VP Social, Ilona, who assisted in the Q&A period yesterday. Kamsi also put together all the beautiful visuals for this event, from the posters, the Instagram and Facebook posts, and the amazing promo video that was released prior to this event. If you have not seen it, it is still available for you to see on our socials. It was amazing. You should definitely go look at it. And last but most definitely not least, our amazing VP Education, Elise, and her planning committee consisting of Julia, Aisha, and Rachel, who have been working tirelessly since early last semester to plan this event for us all. All the effort and hours of hard work that you have put in and the obstacles that you have overcome lately have really brought us this event in a pandemic, and we are so grateful for that, and your efforts have not gone unnoticed. Throughout this conference, we spoke a lot about community and how it's so important and intrinsic to African cultures and societies. And this conference has really been a true testament to that. Not only did we have so much help in planning and bring this event together from the community, but you, the audience, have also contributed through your participation to what I'm proud to say has been a very successful conference. So yesterday we closed out, and as well today, we closed out by saying good night in some of our mother tongues. So I would like to wish you all a good evening. And until next time, in my mother tongue of Mandinka, and say, Almasuto Edia Fonyato. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aisha. We have 15 minutes, and you know what we do with the time that we have left before the conference, we dance. So as you log off and you're stretching and anything you need to do after sitting with us for 5 hours is to enjoy the music. So I'm going to put on some music until 5 o'clock. Feel free to dance and move around. If you have any more questions or last comments you want to leave in the chat to the active accounts, please do so as well. But we're going to be sending some information or some key takeaways from the conference to everyone who's registered. So if you did register through Eventbrite, we have your email. But thank you so much. Remain African and remain proud all the time. So have a good evening.
Thank you very much. All the best, everyone.
Jerusalem, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze